That man was clearly using his power for the first time, yet he managed to shock even the one praised as the most hopeful candidate to become a holy knight. Because human civilization had long been annihilated and he was seen as an inferior race possessing no beastification power for the last 100,000,005 years. Due to prolonged environmental pollution, the Earth gave birth to mutated monsters known as the Fallen, who possess such incredible regenerative abilities that even a nuclear one, couldn't completely destroy them. That's why humanity was forced to continuously conduct experiments on living subjects to find a way to counterattack. In the end, they found the answer, but it was all too late, because by then there were almost no survivors left in the world. With a cold voice, he spoke, "Finally found you." In just a moment, Jin quickly dropped down from the sky. The scene changes to a desolate, remote place where a young man is running in fear, letting out a loud cry. As he ran, he panted heavily and shouted, "Is anyone there? Are there any other survivors?" In his current situation, the young man could only weep helplessly. Just then, a massive, grotesquely shaped monster appeared right in front of him. Not just one, but two of them. The young man was surrounded as they slowly closed in on him. It terrified him beyond measure. "Help me!" the young man screamed in desperation. "Can anyone hear me? Anyone at all? Please come and help those things that ruined this world, that turned it to ash. Please make them pay for what they've done right at that moment." Several rays of light suddenly appeared in the sky. A second later, Jin appeared. With his power, he easily slayed one of the monsters to the complete shock and bewilderment of the young man before him. While the young man was still trying to process what was happening, Jin spoke. "I am truly sorry for arriving so late." Seeing him radiating such a powerful energy, the young man asked with curiosity, Who are you?" Jin, with his jade-green eyes, remained silent for a long moment, not answering. This caused the young man to suddenly tremble. With a faint smile blooming on his lips, he choked out, "Ah, that's right. At long last, we can finally take our world back." "Right?" His voice echoed through the silent emptiness, as faint as a breeze brushing across water. Jin replied coolly, "Yes, that's right, so please rest in peace now." The young man forced a smile, his eyes vacant, and said, "Thank you so much. Thank you." And just like that, he passed away right in front of Jin. A soft, faint sound was heard right after. At this, Jin's expression suddenly darkened, his brows furrowing in helplessness. Just then a voice suddenly called out from somewhere, "Jin, you're a little too late." As soon as he saw this person before him, Jin coolly turned his head to look, then called out, "Kagura!" Kagura adjusted his glasses slightly and replied, he was likely the last survivor in this land. "Just give up, Jin. You need to face this grim reality." At Kagura's words, Jin could only lower his head, unable to respond, seizing the moment. Kagura stated with conviction, "The human race is truly extinct. They were born from prolonged environmental pollution, those disgusting mutated monsters, and all the Fallen. They possess a level of physical regeneration that is unthinkable. Not even nuclear weapons could wipe them out. However, we never intended to give up. By continuously conducting experiments on human bodies, we finally found a tool to fight back. But now there's no one left for us to save. Right." As he lamented, Kagura sighed helplessly. He watched the last person on Earth disappear, his voice echoing, "We really were too late." Jin tried to argue back, "There's still something worth protecting." Hearing this, Kagura was incredibly doubtful. "Do you really believe there are still survivors?" "Out there?" Jin brushed past him like a gentle breeze, replying softly, "Not exactly." With a smile on his lips, Jin stated firmly, "But in the future, the nanomachines you worked so hard to create, they also have the ability to heal the environment." "Right," Kagura replied, "that's right." Upon hearing this, Jin continued his analysis. "That nano-army not only neutralizes the regenerative abilities of the Fallen, but it also activates the process of restoring this planet. And then one day, this planet will reclaim its former beauty. And at that exact moment, a new civilization will surely blossom just as humanity once did." After listening to Jin for a while, Kagura couldn't help but find it hard to believe. "That sounds like some faraway fairy tale." Jin calmly explained, "For me, that is enough. Perhaps just that tiny glimmer of hope is more than enough." In Jin's thoughts, the power I now hold may become necessary in the future. Model, trusting in those two words, perhaps. Maybe that's the very key to saving the entire future. After watching Jin in the experiment chamber for a while, Kagura turned and left with the faint glimmer of hope she had left. Just being able to pass that chance on to the next generation is enough. Just then a voice suddenly echoed from somewhere. Hibernation system activated. 0. While monsters were scattered all over the earth, the system's voice grew louder and louder. 5, 2153, 376, 974, 1,384, 5,180, 8,492, 17,987. Following the system's count, the Earth was gradually restoring itself. Meanwhile, the monsters grew weaker by the day. The numbers continued to rise: 32,416, 56,428, 84,524. And so the sun rose high as life began to sprout as birds soared through the vast sky. It was the dawn of the monsters' decline. 184,236, 246,578, 306,938, 562,487, 847,527. As the numbers increased, the earth gradually became lush again. Cute rabbits appeared. Horses grazed peacefully, a sight the earth had not seen for a long, long time. Meanwhile, the numbers continued to climb. 3,984,235, 5,525,000, 469, 7,550,000, 192, 14,292, 14,250,000, 785, 25,402,437, 45,000, 756,249, 89,524,025. When the earth could once again see the sun and had blue seas and white sandy beaches, that was the story 100,000,005 years later. A notification from the system rang out. Access code confirmed. Beginning hibernation release protocol. The sound of hurried footsteps. Hakama's face was now beaded with sweat. Her whole family was escaping an attack from a red-eyed monster. In the current life-or-death situation, Denpu, running behind, cried out helplessly, "Is he really in a place like this?" Hakama affirmed with certainty, "He definitely is." Sandy, feeling hopeless, quickly cut in. "But if he's not here, we're as good as dead." Upon hearing that Hakama spoke up, "He really is here." As she finished her sentence, she clutched her necklace tightly. In the next second, Hakama's eyes widened with a solemn resolve as she declared, "Our guardian god is definitely present in this place." As she spoke, Hakama's group ran straight toward the old temple door right in front of them, panicked. The entrance was just inside. As soon as they saw there was no way out, Denpu announced in despair, "Look, it's a dead end ahead." Upon hearing this, even Hakama's face fell too panicked to speak. Meanwhile, the giant, ferocious monster had caught up to them. This terrified Sandy even more. What are we going to do now? While her two friends were huddled down, awaiting their fate. Hakama still clung to a fragile sliver of hope, pleading, "Please save us." As she shouted, tears welled up in her eyes. "Please save us, O guardian god!" Just as Hakama finished her plea, the experiment chamber instantly shattered. In a flash, a voice rang out, "Request received." It was accompanied by an immense surge of energy. That shot straight toward the monster, to Hakama's group's astonishment. With a single blow, the monster was obliterated. Hakama and her friends couldn't help but be startled by what had just happened. Meanwhile, an unfamiliar voice from afar continued to echo, "I told you that faith was well worth it, didn't I?" A figure gradually emerged from the experiment chamber. That person was none other than Jin. He had been in hibernation for 100,000,005 years, waiting for the day he would return. With a smile on his face, Jin declared confidently, "Believe in the infinite possibilities of the future." Opening the storage box, Jin remarked, "This storage box that Kagura made is truly incredible. My clothes are still in the same condition as they were originally." As he looked at the computer screen, his expression filled with disbelief. However, is this really the world 100,000,005 years later? Most of the stored data has been severely corrupted. It's a miracle this shelter has managed to last until now. Perhaps it's all thanks to the presence of the nanoparticles in the air. The syringe on the table is the nanoparticle injection device. Holding the small box in his hand, Jin thought pensively, "I really want to find out what happened to this Earth. But Kagura only left me this one message cube." Well, before we get to that, as he thought this, Jin, still completely naked, turned and asked Hakama's group, "Could you all tell me about the current situation?" "Oh, how rude of me. It seems I've been naked for the past 100,000,005 years." The more he spoke, the more Hakama's group gaped at him in disbelief. Jin gently put his gloves back on, then continued, "Well, it's about time. I should have a more presentable appearance, shouldn't I?" As soon as he said that Jin was clad in the exact same clothes as 100,000,005 years prior, the secret door unopened for countless centuries was finally greeted by sunlight. Jin's group slowly walked out. As he saw the scene before him, Jin's face was filled with utter shock and astonishment. Looking at the lush green landscape with its rolling mountains and long-stretching canals, Jin couldn't believe his eyes. So this is the world after a long 100,000,005 years. There's not a single trace left of the era I knew. Seeing his bewildered state, Hakama standing beside him immediately tugged on his sleeve and called out, "Sir Guardian God, please this way. Please stick close to us." As she finished, the little girl pointed towards the group with Denpu walking ahead. Seeing this, Jin immediately became watchful, unable to shake his suspicion of the people before him. Are they human? Impossible. Humanity should have gone extinct in the previous era. Could it be that they evolved to have a human-like form during that long, long time? The more he thought, the more he analyzed the forms of Denpu and Sandy. Meanwhile, as Hakama stared at Jin with a confused expression, he was still lost in his own train of thought. It's very likely they've been affected by nanomachines. The fact that they still use the same language from 100,000,005 years ago is the clearest proof. As the thought concluded, Jin smiled and introduced himself. I haven't had a chance to introduce myself yet. My name is Jin Shido. You can just call me Jin." Hearing this, Hakama replied, "My name is Hakama. You can call me Hakama, sir." Not far away, Denpu and Sandy quickly chimed in, "And I'm Denpu. I'm Sandy." After hearing them all, Jin couldn't help but wonder, "So what now? What do you all need my help with?" Pulling him along, Hakama explained, "We're almost there. We hope that you can destroy the invader out there." This filled Jin with questions. "An invader?" While the two of them were talking, Sandy's face suddenly turned pale. The boy, scared and trembling, screamed loudly. The moment they saw the village engulfed in smoke and flames, Sandy and Denpu were utterly stunned. "Our village!" As the words left his lips, Sandy could no longer contain his emotions. He ran straight ahead, crying, "Dad, Mom!" Hakama, standing behind, quickly tried to stop him. "Wait! Don't run so fast!" In this situation, Jin just stood there silently observing everything. Everything seemed to be just as he had predicted. Wooden fences, rows of houses also built from wood. It seems their level of civilization hasn't progressed much. As the thought crossed his mind, Jin followed Hakama's group deeper into the burning village. The moment she saw the scene before her, Hakama's face went pale. In an instant, the little girl screamed, "Grandma!" Her grandmother, who was also... The village chief was in a direct confrontation with a massive monster. As soon as she saw Hakama, she warned her worriedly, "Hakama, is that you? Why have you come back at a time like this?" Staring at the monster before him, Jin coolly thought to himself, so that's the invader everyone was talking about. It looks just like a fallen one. Could it be that in this era, they call them invaders? The village chief, helpless at this point, pleaded, "Get out of this area now." Hakama, of course, paid her no mind. Unleashing her own power, the girl declared firmly, "I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying to help you." The moment he saw the energy flowing through the girl, Jin was slightly startled, thinking to himself, "This reaction. It's time for me to verify my theory." As the thought ended, he swiftly rushed forward. With a single blow, Jin easily sent the monster flying. As he held the village chief in his arms, Jin politely offered, "Allow me to intervene for a moment." In that instant, Hakama seized the opportunity to charge forward. As he saw the girl using her power to attack the monster, Jin praised her aloud, "Excellent, go for it." Hakama gathered power in the palm of her hand, then struck directly at the monster. The force exploded, causing it to stumble back a few steps in pain. Only when he saw the monster's corpse lying on the ground could Jin confirm with certainty in his mind, it really is the regeneration-inhibiting mechanism from the microparticles, the fallen one's cells, and show no signs of recovery. Did that girl manage to control the nanomachines in the atmosphere? Normally only those with a compatible physiology can do that. But, as he thought this, he wondered aloud, that fireball? Can everyone in this era do that? At his question, the village chief couldn't help but feel a bit suspicious. This era? What do you mean? Nevertheless, she still answered Jin's question. No, only a small number of people have that ability. They are the ones who possess divine power. Including myself, there are only 4 such people in this village. This took Jin by surprise. Divine power. The next second, he was again lost in thought. So that's what they call the energy to control nanomachines. Just then, Hakama suddenly ran towards the village chief. She asked with a face full of worry, "Grandma, where is everyone else in the village?" The village chief calmly replied that she had already evacuated them all. But more importantly, why on earth did you children come back here? The moment she said that, her brows furrowed in despair. This village is finished. The monster from before was actually just a newborn hatchling. We're completely helpless against the real adults. Before long, a swarm of those creatures will pour in and wipe out this entire village. Just as her lament faded, another voice rang out. "Grandma, could you try being a little less cowardly?" Seeing the person who had spoken, the village chief called out, "Shax." Meanwhile, Shax spoke nonchalantly. "The invaders are nothing special. I'll tear every last one of them to shreds." The village chief asked anxiously, "Shax, where have the villagers been taken?" Shax replied, "I personally led all of them to the shelter." Hakama gently ran over, softly, calling out, "Father." Seeing his daughter, Hakama's father smiled and asked, "Hakama, I was worried sick when I didn't see you at the shelter." "Where on earth have you been?" Hakama answered clearly, "I went to the sealed door." At the little girl's reply, the village chief was, of course, utterly horrified. "Hakama, you have some nerve! How dare you enter that forbidden land?" Hakama, frightened and flustered, replied, "Grandmother once told me that our village's guardian deity is sleeping behind that door, and if the village were to fall into peril, he would surely appear to save us." The moment she heard this, the village chief immediately followed Hakama's gaze to Jin, looking at him with curiosity. "Is this him? He doesn't have the air of a god at all. Besides..." Cutting off her train of thought, Shax suddenly scoffed mockingly. "Humph! Give me a break. This lowly species is supposed to be a guardian deity. Stop spouting such nonsense in front of me." Upon hearing these words, Jin frowned in annoyance and retorted, "Lowly species?" Sandy tried to approach Shax to explain, Brother, this person really is our guardian deity." The more he listened, the more confused Shax became. "What I was wondering where you went. Turns out you were with Hakama." As soon as he finished speaking, Shax walked right up to Jin and sized him up with a contemptuous tone. "Look at his ears. He's just a lowly being with no beast folk characteristics at all. He probably just happened to be wandering around there, and you all gravely misunderstood him." Seeing Shax's analysis, Sandy quickly retorted, "No, we weren't mistaken. He defeated one of the invaders with his own hands." Shax let out a loud, amused laugh. "You mean that youngling from before? I could have finished that thing off in a single blow." As he said this, he brazenly pointed the tip of his blade straight at Jin and threatened coldly, "Listen up. This is an internal affair of our village. We don't need some lowly outsider interfering, that's what I mean. Don't you dare interfere." As soon as he finished, Shax brushed past Jin like a gust of wind. Seeing him leave, Hakama's father couldn't help but ask, "Wait, Shax, where are you going?" Shax replied, "Isn't it obvious? I'm going to annihilate that giant monster. The rest of you can just stay here and tremble," Shax said with a contemptuous tone and expression. This made the village chief feel utterly helpless, and she immediately chided, "That fool! You could save your own life if you just ran away right now." In the current situation, Jin just silently watched the show. The village chief slowly approached him and spoke gravely. "All right, I don't know who you are, but regardless, thank you for helping the children. If you don't mind, could you please take these kids to the shelter with my son? I have to go after Shax and stop him and play this one last gambit." Upon hearing this, Hakama, filled with worry, cried out, "Grandmother!" Jin paid no heed to the request, coldly retorting, which made the village chief pause. "I refuse. I have my pride. I can't just stand by while he calls me a lowly being, so just let him go get himself killed." With a resolute tone, Jin simply turned and walked away. He left everyone stunned and surprised. As dusk fell, the alpha monster appeared outside with its enormous body and tough scales. Model, it slowly advanced step by step. Just then, a figure suddenly appeared, spear in hand, as his voice rang out, "Hey, you beast!" Releasing his power, he declared with absolute certainty, "I am the one who will bear the fate of this nation." On the shoulders of a warrior destined to become a holy knight, is an invading creature of this level really all you are? I'll show you that I'm strong enough to take you down without anyone's help. As soon as the words left his mouth, Shax, brimming with lightning power, charged straight at the leader. This, of course, caught the attention of the smaller ones. Instantly, they all braced themselves and lunged directly at Shax. With a single swift slash, he easily defeated them. His spirit soaring with confidence, Shax yelled, "You're in my way. This single slash of mine is more than enough to finish you. The moment he finished speaking, Shax charged directly at the leader. He then leaped high into the air and shouted, "Take this!" In an instant, Shax landed a decisive blow on the large creature's body. Blood spurted out, making Shax feel even more thrilled. The leader screamed in pain, however. Very soon after, it healed its own wound. Seeing this, Shax couldn't help but be completely stunned, thinking to himself, the gashes on its body, but are they regenerating? While he was lost in his thoughts, the monster had already moved in to attack. In a flash, a desperate scream rang out. However, Shax was unharmed. Confused, he immediately cracked his eyes open to see Jean, who had appeared, and used his power to save Shax's life. Jean asked mockingly, "Are you finished with your little farce?" Seeing him, Shax stammered in reply, You... Before he could finish, he had to dodge an attack from the smaller creatures. Looking at them, Shax wondered, how are these things still able to move? Jin was slightly moving his hand. The next second, he snapped his fingers. In an instant, the smaller creatures were all defeated in a single blow. Shax was utterly bewildered. He looked at the small monster lying defeated on the ground and wondered, what in the world is going on? Just then, a voice suddenly called out from the distance, "Grandma, quick, run this way! Hurry up!" It was Hakama's group. As soon as they saw Shax, they called out to him in alarm. However, no sooner had they spoken than both the village chief and Hakama's father were stunned. Astonished by the scene unfolding, the village chief blinked, his jaw dropping in disbelief, thinking to himself, what the hell is happening before my eyes? What is this monstrosity? To think he could stop such a massive, colossal body with just one hand. Just then, Jin suddenly said, "It's starting to get heavy." For now, everyone fall back. At his warning, Shax couldn't help but ask, confused, "Huh?" Without another word, Jin pulled him away. Just as expected, the monster lunged towards them, leaving Shax even more dumbfounded. After being saved by Jin, he immediately asked, "What in the world are you?" Jin calmly replied, "Those creatures can regenerate instantly no matter how much damage you inflict. That's why we have to use nanites to block their regenerative abilities." The more he listened, the more confused Shax became. No, what? Jin stood up slowly and explained further, "It's what people like you call divine power. Your last attack wasn't bad. Unfortunately, it was too shallow to activate the regeneration blocking effect." With a bewildered expression, Shax asked, "Are you really the guardian god from the legends?" Jin casually replied, "I'm no god. However, there's one thing I need to make clear to you. You claimed this was a private matter for this village." "Right," Shax stammered in agreement. "That's right, that's why I—" Before he could finish, Jin cut him off. "You're gravely mistaken. In reality, this is my own personal problem." Just then, the monster, having quickly returned to its full vitality, charged straight at him. With his agile body, Jin easily dodged every blow, meticulously observing it as he calculated his next move. "First, I'll lock down all of its movements." As soon as the thought crossed his mind, he flicked his hand, detonating a small tendril. In an instant, it spread out across the monster's entire body. This caused it to cry out in extreme pain. While Shax stood there, jaw agape at the sight, Jin continued to speak. "These abominations are monsters, born from our own foolishness. For that very reason, and I, a survivor from the era of 100,000,005 years ago, must take responsibility for ending this mess with my own hands." The moment he finished speaking, Jean gathered lightning in his hands, preparing to attack. This made Sasha even more incredulous and doubtful. "I don't completely understand what you're saying." "But can you really do it?" Jean affirmed with absolute certainty. "Of course I can, because I am a product born from human civilization, carrying the bloody history of endless days filled with brutality and tragic sorrow. The last surviving human being, and also..." At that moment, Jin unleashed his immense power toward the monster, causing the water around it to surge violently. The monster opened its gigantic mouth. Then it took the full force of Jin's attack. A horrifying scene unfolded immediately after. With a single move, he had easily eliminated the monster. The situation, of course, left Hakama's group utterly stunned. Everyone stared wide-eyed and open-mouthed in astonishment. Hakama even broke into a wide, excited grin. Jin's immense power, far beyond the imagination of ordinary people, shot straight through the Earth's atmosphere. After his attack, the monster was finally defeated. Sasha was scared out of his wits, his face drenched in sweat with unbelievable panic, while Jin remained perfectly calm, the ultimate scientific weapon. As he finished his sentence, a faint smile appeared on his lips. Not far from where Jin was, a light rustling sound suddenly emerged. The girl hiding in the bushes had witnessed everything, her heart filled with shock and amazement. She had originally come here to investigate the invading creature that had recently appeared in the area near the village of Kodama. And yet she had just witnessed an unbelievable sight. What in the world was that power? Not even the captain of the Royal Knights in the capital could do something like that. This is extremely serious. I have to get back to the capital at once to report this entire incident to the guildmaster. As her thoughts concluded, the girl with the magnifying glass beamed with excitement. As night fell in a corner of the forest, a voice echoed out, "Can you hear me, Jin, if you are listening to these words? Then it probably means that I no longer exist in this world." Kagura let out a smug laugh. I've always wanted to say a classic movie-like line like that. So, what does the future world look like through your eyes now? The global environment must have improved a lot, right? However, one problem still remains. Jin repeated with suspicion. A problem. Kagura didn't beat around the bush. I'll get straight to the point. Even if the ecosystem recovers, the corrupted have not been completely eradicated. Jin's eyes narrowed slightly. At that moment, Kagura became aware of something. I started noticing something was wrong about a millennium after you began your hibernation. I myself had to undergo periodic hibernation to be able to directly observe the changes in the world. Thanks to the rebirth of the natural environment, the number of the corrupted decreased significantly. As the satellite widened its view of the red dot, it captured a clear image of a bizarre figure and a dark horse. That person was overflowing with killing intent. He quickly detected the surveillance and the screen went black. Kagura grew worried. Along with the changes in natural conditions, evolved variants of the corrupted will have begun to appear. I'm not sure in what direction they will evolve, but they will certainly become an immeasurable threat. All I could do at that time was prepare the newly born life forms with enough capability to fight back against those monsters, even if it's just a little bit, and at the same time leave behind a backup source of power just for you. At this, Jin subconsciously put his hand in his pocket. Power. He held the syringe, unable to hide his suspicion. You mean this thing right in front of me? Kagura's voice continued. Once you activate it, the nanomachines will automatically guide you on how to operate them through the process of body enhancement. You are the only individual who is perfectly compatible with the nanomachines and can wield this power. After injecting it, the object in Jin's hand vanished, leaving him a bit taken aback. Suddenly, a dagger appeared in the palm of his hand. Jin began to realize. So this is the ability to create matter, and by reconfiguring the structure of nanomaterials. This thing is really useful. Kagura added proudly, I have hidden similar upgrade power sources in secret research facilities scattered across the planet. I didn't leave them in one place. As a precaution. If they were to fall into the hands of the corrupted, it would prevent them from all being destroyed at once, and also because I wanted you to personally go and explore the vast world out there. Kagura spoke honestly. I can't predict the level of danger the corrupted will pose in the distant future. However, compared to the ruined world of the past, things must be much better now. Nearby Agos reined in his horse when he heard a strange sound. That's the sound of hurried footsteps. The footsteps belonged to that brown-haired girl. Thanks to the peace and quiet, the town was already fast asleep. Here and there, the faint light of candles could be seen from those still reading. Kagura smiled reassuringly at Jin. For now, let's just enjoy this new world, okay? Just then the screen flickered, revealing an elderly figure. I won't be able to be by your side to witness that with you. Jin couldn't hide the shock in his eyes. The old Kagura left one last message. It's all up to you now. Jin. The box returned to its original shape as Jin fell silent. I understand now. Just then, two small figures ran up to him. Lord Guardian, Hakama exclaimed, overjoyed to see him. So this is where you were. Denpu, looking exhausted, told Jin, everyone's been frantically looking for you. The two of them clung to his arm, pleading, please, you have to come back now. The party can't possibly start without the guest of honor. Suddenly, Jin tensed up. The thing that had just caught his eye was hanging around Hakama's neck. Is that the access key to the research institute? Letting himself be dragged along, Jin asked the little girl. Hakama, where did you get that pendant? Hakama touched the key, looking puzzled. This, the little girl answered honestly. My clan received it from a great sage a very, very long time ago. It's a protective charm that's been passed down for many generations. They say that if the village is ever in grave danger, this will lead the guardian deity to us, to protect us. Jin smiled gently upon learning this new information. So that's how it is. No wonder she was able to get inside. It seems I owe them a pretty big favor. In the village, a bonfire was burning as everyone gathered cheerfully. They all looked up when they heard excited shouts. This way! Hurry up! Everyone had the same question on their minds. Is that really the guardian deity from the legends? They looked Jin up and down, sizing him up. Are you kidding me? No matter how you look at him, he's just some lowlife. That person kept on taunting that scrawny guy. I really took down that monster. Dewey quickly spotted the group. Without a second thought, Sack landed a punch right in the loudmouth's face. At that moment, "What would you know? You were too busy running for your lives." Sandy worriedly asked him, "Are you all right, sir?" "My sincerest apologies for that disrespect," Sack yelled. "Our god, our guardian deity, is truly magnificent." Even Hakama was surprised. Talk about a 180-degree turn in attitude. Denpu sighed in relief. "It's like he's a completely different person from this afternoon." The village chief came forward from behind, smiling cheerfully. "Ah, so this is where you were." Jin greeted her politely. "Village chief." She carefully addressed him. "Allow me on behalf of the villagers to say this one more time. We offer you our deepest gratitude." The man beside her was also immensely grateful. "If you hadn't appeared when you did, this entire village would have been completely wiped out. We truly want to repay you for this kindness." Jin just gave a small smile. "Please don't worry about it." The man still wanted to express his thanks. But Jin spoke plainly. "If you really insist, I don't need any material goods. What I need right now is information. I want to know in detail about the current state of this world." He was stunned for a few seconds by this strange request. "The state of the entire world, you say?" The village chief made a suggestion to Jin. "If that's the case, then it would be best for you to take a trip to the imperial capital." The name was rather unfamiliar to Jin. The imperial capital. The chief explained to him, "It is where the king who rules this kingdom of Cormosia resides. People from all over the land gather there, so they are sure to be well informed about news from the outside world. We, the people of Kodama village, also travel there often for trade. Our specialty woodworm silk." The village chief nodded, encouraging Jin. "The road ahead is long and fraught with danger, but I believe that with the power of a guardian deity, it won't be a problem." However, for Jin, there was one difficulty. "But I don't know the way." She patted the little girl's head beside her and assigned her the task. "Please let little Hakama accompany you as your guide. She has some business to take care of in the capital anyway." Jin was quite curious. Her own business? The village chief didn't hide anything from him. "I'm sure you've already witnessed it for yourself. Guardian, this child is able to use divine power, and in the imperial capital there is an academy that specializes in training and helping people develop that kind of sacred power. We almost gave up because of the recent turmoil, but I still hope the little one can enroll in school as planned." Jin was a little surprised to realize that in this era, schools still exist. Suddenly another voice cut in. "Hold on, everyone, wait a minute." Shax confidently stepped forward. "I'm the one who's more worthy of guiding the guardian deity." The village chief was confused. "Shax, what business do you even have in the royal capital?" Shax declared, his nose in the air. "Of course I do. I plan to join the ranks of the holy knights in the capital." The village chief could only sigh. "You couldn't even pass the academy's entrance exam. How could you dream of getting in there?" As if his tail had been stepped on, Shax flew into a rage. "You old hag, what did you just say?" Jin cut them off with a question. "Don't you just need divine power to be accepted?" Hakama immediately reminded him, "You also have to pass a written exam, sir." Shax is, well, an idiot, so he failed. Amidst the loud arguing, Jin finally understood. "Ah, so that's how it is." He seriously considered it. "The Holy Knights, huh? Sounds interesting. I'm starting to get curious myself." Elsewhere, Agos had just received a report. A giant invading monster appeared in Kodama village, and it's already been defeated. The girl affirmed with a certainty, "That is absolutely correct, sir." However, he asked again, "Is everything you're telling me the truth?" The girl hastily confirmed, "I swear it's true, sir. In fact, I was on my way back to report to the guildmaster." This information made Agos fall silent. "I thought it couldn't be defeated without a holy knight. That's why I came here on my own without waiting for orders from the guild." "I can't believe someone already took care of it," the girl exclaimed happily, not noticing a foot approaching nearby. "Anyway, I never thought I'd meet a holy knight in a remote place like this. What a coincidence." A monster suddenly appeared as if to pounce on her. Agos reacted instinctively, and finished off of the monster to the girl's horror. The creature's sudden appearance made him believe her story a little more. "If what you say is true, then this is getting very interesting." A sense of anticipation grew within Agos. "I myself am starting to get excited to meet this person." The sun rose higher, its gentle light spreading, bringing a fresh and peaceful morning to Kadama village. Jin stepped outside, taking in the warm scenery before him. He couldn't help but exclaim, "What a beautiful morning!" The air was so fresh and pleasant. Before him was a scene of green mountains and birds flying high above. It made Jin feel that he never expected to witness such a sight with his own eyes. He raised a hand to his forehead with a hint of regret. If only Kagura could see this too. Just then, San approached from behind holding some clothes. "Sir? Guardian deity?" The boy looked at the completely bare body before him and offered, "These clothes, please put them on." The scene shifts to Jin's departure from the village. The village chief and a few others stood around Hakama. She looked at the little girl and advised, "Hakama, remember to do a good job in your role. And as a guide, okay?" The little girl replied politely, "Yes, I understand." Shax, turning his face away, spoke with annoyance. "And here I thought I'd have a chance to learn so much from the guardian deity." The village chief sighed in response. "First, you need to focus on your studies." Hearing this, he snapped, "Shut up, old woman." Seeing this, Jin, who was nearby, offered some encouragement. "You're Shax's right. Your movement techniques yesterday weren't bad at all." Shax's face suddenly flushed red with surprise. Hearing Jin add, "I'll be waiting for you in the royal capital," he burst with excitement and shouted, "I'll definitely be there. I'll study as hard as I can," he yelled. Hakama's father came forward to shake Jin's hand, entrusting his daughter to him. "Guardian deity, please take care of Hakama for me." Then he bent down, placed his hands on the little girl's small shoulders, and said, "Hakama, just make sure you stay healthy, okay?" The little girl replied, "Yes, father." After saying their goodbyes, Jin and Hakama waved. "Well, then we're off." And so the two of them, one big and one small, set off together. He and the little girl walked along the nearby stream. The sky began to turn pink. Jin stopped at a waterfall ahead to let Hakama drink. The two continued on, watching the sun slowly dip behind the mountains. The sky was still glowing pink in the warm evening light. The little girl couldn't help but point forward excitedly. By now night had fallen and the two sat before a campfire to rest. Jin spoke up. "How much farther is it to the royal capital from here?" Hakama, chewing on a piece of bread, replied, "We have to walk for about 4 more days." He seemed somewhat pleased. "That's closer than I thought." The girl stammered a bit. Guardian deity." Jin replied, "What is it?" Hakama asked curiously. "Why do you want to know so much about this world?" "Ah," he replied mysteriously, "that's a secret." The little girl wondered to herself, "Another secret." That question sent Jin into a daze. "The corrupted ones have not yet been destroyed." Those were the words Kagura had affirmed. Thinking back to the past made him even more certain. It really is true. The corrupted ones still exist in this era. Jin was lost in thought again. However, they can usually only multiply in heavily polluted environments. But this place... He looked at the blazing fire before him and thought, there's definitely some kind of change happening. Seeing Jin so silent, Hakama grew worried and interrupted his train of thought. "Guardian deity, you look really scary right now." Hearing that, he replied, "My apologies, I was just lost in thought." Jin stared at the little girl thinking, at least there are still humans living in this era. Humans who aren't controlled by the corrupted ones. Hakama tilted her head, puzzled by Jin's calculating gaze. "First, I need to figure out how the people of this era deal with the corrupted, and in what way. As for the corrupted ones themselves, I can study them gradually later on." Hakama asked, "By the way, what should I call you?" He replied, "Just call me Jin." The little girl said, "Lord Jin?" He corrected her, "Just Jin. There's no need to add Lord." The little girl obediently said, "Jin." Suddenly, someone on horseback galloped toward them from a distance. Hearing the sound, the two of them reacted instinctively. They turned to look. The newcomer quickly spoke up. "Pardon me for disturbing your rest." He and 2 riders behind him approached them. "May I have a moment of your time?" The man had a commanding presence. Puzzled, Jin asked, "Who are you?" Agos looked down at him and introduced himself. "We are from the royal capital's Holy Knights. I am the captain of the 7th Division. My name is Agos Anton." Jin muttered, "Holy Knights." He wondered to himself, could these be the people she mentioned earlier? Suddenly, a girl named Karina gritted her teeth in annoyance and yelled, "You! What's with that attitude in front of our captain? The least you could do is stand up and show some respect." Then turning to Agos as he dismounted, she said, "Such insolence, Captain, it has to be them." Hearing this, he cut her off. "That's enough, Karina." Agos approached Jin and gestured, "Please forgive my rudeness for speaking to you from horseback." Would you mind having a word with me? Seeing this, Jin stood up and asked curiously, what did she mean just now when she said it has to be them? He ignored the question and simply said, on behalf of my subordinate, I apologize for her recent rudeness. Then Agos began his questioning. However, first I need you to answer a few questions. Where have you two come from and where are you going? Hakama, while munching on a snack, answered truthfully. We came from Kodama village and we're heading to the royal capital. He seemed suspicious, thinking to himself, from Kodama village. Upon hearing her answer, Karina gave a strange smile. She immediately leaped off her horse, declaring, I'm still certain it's them, sir. Karina gripped her sword filled with fiery determination. She yelled, there are no birth records for any of the lower races in Kodama village. Your lies are exposed. Lower races. Hearing that, Jin looked surprised and thought, so they have birth records here? This country is managed quite strictly. Suddenly, Agos cut through her fervor with a single word, no. This made her stop short. Huh? He looked at Hakama and explained, the clothes that little girl is wearing are a specialty of the Kodama region. It's Kodama silk clothing. Even in the capital, it's sold for an extremely high price. It's considered an extremely high-end garment. With that assessment, Kodama silk tailored for a child is an extremely rare item on the market. Therefore, her being from Kodama village is likely the truth. Those words left Karina flustered. But suddenly he drew his sword, pointing it directly at Jin. However, he declared, you are another matter entirely. Agos glanced at Jin's attire. Those clothes you're wearing, they're bizarre. What country are they from? He explained the situation. There has been a string of robberies on the road from Kodama village to the royal capital, carried out by a gang of bandits who use children to steal goods. Agos's gaze was intense as he stated his theory. It's a situation very similar to yours right now. They usually operate by pretending to be innocent. Hearing that, Hakama panicked and shouted, it wasn't us, he replied coldly. We'll be the ones to decide that. The girl gritted her teeth. Looking anxious, Hakama seemed to make up her mind and began to unleash her divine power. August, as if sensing her intent, frowned as he caused several swords to glow. They appeared around Hakama and he yelled, don't you dare try anything here! The girl frowned, struggling with her current situation. August was somewhat surprised and remarked, I never expected you to possess divine power. You seem to have quite a bit of potential. Jin silently observed Hakama's situation, thinking to himself, so this is a holy night. Seeing the intimidating aura he projected, Jin had to admit it. I see. He really is strong. August, with the same attitude, questioned Jin, answer me now. Where are you from? Depending on your testimony. Well, he threatened, it will determine whether or not I strike your head from your shoulders right here on this spot. Jin remained silent, his expression slowly changing at the man's unpleasant words. August pointed the tip of his sword at Jin and demanded, answer me. Where did you really come from? What you are about to say. He narrowed his eyes, staring intently at him, never letting his guard down. We'll decide whether you keep your head or not. Despite the threat, Jin was unmoved, maintaining his silence. His face darkened, his gaze as sharp as a blade. August's presence was no less imposing. His eyes fixed firmly on his opponent. Faced with his persistence, Jin could only sigh in resignation. I'm from Kodama village. The moment she heard this name, Karina, standing behind August, immediately flared up. What? That's clearly a lie. Ignoring the girl's suspicion, he accepted Jin's words and sheathed his sword at his side. I see. This left the girl confused. Wait, Captain. August turned to Hakama, who was standing before him, to verify the information. You're not lying, are you? The girl affirmed it with certainty. Jin really is the guardian deity of our Kodama village. He was a little startled to hear this. A guardian deity. But he didn't press further. So that's how it is. Seeing August preparing to leave, Jin was a bit surprised. Are your questions finished? Yes. He jumped onto his horse, looking apologetic. I still have matters to attend to. I hope you two can forgive my rudeness just now. But Karina wasn't ready to let Jin go, yelling, Oh, Captain! Ignoring her shouting, August asked Jin, Are you two also heading towards the capital? Yes, we are. I see. Well then, we will surely cross paths again. He expressed his goodwill, offering to help. In the future, if you run into any trouble, just come find me. Consider it an apology for today's incident. Karina yelled again, Captain! August spurred his horse to leave. Well then, I'll take my leave and not bother you two any longer. The girl was dumbfounded and confused by his actions. "What is this? Are you serious, sir?" The girl called after him, "Captain, wait for me." Jin watched the two of them leave and could only give a wry smile. The scene changes to the army led by August moving towards the capital. Karina couldn't stop questioning him about what had just happened. "Why did you choose to withdraw, sir?" She waved her arms about incessantly as she questioned him. "No matter how you look at it, that commoner is extremely suspicious." August remained silent, lost in his own thoughts. "A commoner, you say?" He finally spoke up. One has to wonder who was truly the weaker one there. Karina was confused by August's words. "What do you mean, Rhea riding beside them also agreed?" "He's right." This made the girl even more confused. "You too, Senior Rhea?" She tilted her head slightly, looking at Karina. "You didn't realize it." Rhea recalled that moment. The power radiating around Jin was incredibly strong. The vast difference in strength between us and that man. August continued, his expression grim. "I tried to make a move 2 or 3 times, but..." He recalled the moment he pointed his sword at Jin. The blade in August's hand was completely unable to move. Meanwhile, Jin just casually put his hands in his pockets, using his power to stop the sword. The battle's outcome was decided before it could even begin. He had already countered before I could even flinch. Dia looked worriedly at August. "Captain, sir, did you use your holy power?" "Yes, I did." His admission startled Karina. "I couldn't even activate it." At that moment, August had intended to use the same trick on him as he had on Hakama. "I intended to use the same power I used on that girl, but the spirits refused to lend me their strength." Rhea had to admit, I was in the exact same situation. Only then did Karina belatedly realize. "That means," August continued, "it also means that the disparity in holy power between us was just too great to be able to perform such a feat." His expression darkened. Realizing the gravity of the situation, he continued, "In fact, in this entire order of knights, perhaps only the Grand Commander would be strong enough to match him." Karina and Dia were both startled to hear this. The girl gritted her teeth, blaming herself. I didn't sense anything at all." August was completely understanding. "That's simply because that man is an anomaly. Besides, you've only just joined the squad." People were buzzing, wondering if that's the guy who defeated the invading monster. Most likely. Karina still wasn't at ease. She didn't want to give up so easily. "Are we really just going to let them walk away like that? Isn't that too dangerous?" Agos replied helplessly. "I don't know who they are, but they don't seem to have any ill intent. For now, let's just observe them quietly." Putting that matter aside for a moment, he turned his head to remind everyone, "All right, let's head back to the capital. We've dealt with the monster invasion sooner than expected, but we can't be away any longer. I'll hand over the bandit case to the association to handle." "Understood, sir." Rhea turned to advise Karina. "After what happened today, you should focus more on training your character rather than just your strength." Walking ahead, Agos was lost in thought. The guardian deity of Kodama village. While he was thinking, his troops had already approached the capital. If that person becomes our ally. Agos wanted to seize this opportunity. They could be the key to solving the most difficult problem this kingdom is facing. The scene changes. Jin and Hakama are also marching towards the capital. He remarked, yesterday was quite an interesting encounter. He wondered if all the knights in the capital possessed such formidable strength. The little girl denied it. "No, they're a special case." Hakama could recognize them immediately. Holy Knights. They're an elite group carefully selected from the best of the Knight Order. And those two are among the most outstanding in that elite corps. She couldn't stop praising their strength. Their speed at summoning spirits. No, I should say their spirit arts are on a completely different level. Jin was a little confused. Spirit arts. Hakama explained, "It's the art of summoning spirits from the elements and borrowing their power." He nodded. "I see. So they call nanoparticles spirits." He thought to himself as he walked in this era, science seems to be nothing more than a fantasy. Suddenly, Jin remembered the image of an aggressive Karina pointing her sword at him, cursing, "You low-life trash." He sighed. And that whole inferior race thing, this led him to deduce, it seems like this era has countless different races, huh? That's right. Hakama described a few common ones. There are people who look exactly like fish, and others who have the form of insects. Jin was surprised. Insects? The little girl explained the reason for this more clearly. My grandmother once told me. The reason is that habitats shrunk a very long time ago. That caused the races to look different. People's bodies gradually changed to adapt to the places where they lived. Jin was completely surprised by this new information. Evolution based on environmental impact. He was lost in his own thoughts. So does that mean there were survivors from 100 million and 5 years ago, and the humans of that time evolved into these forms? Now thinking hard about it, won't solve anything. Jin finally understood the reason he was looked down upon, and that's why people who haven't evolved are called inferior. Yes, Hakama knew that's just how this world was. That's why society looks down on the inferior people who haven't adapted to the environment because they're considered laggards. The girl provided some more information about this world. Most of the people sold into slavery are also from the inferior races. Jin gritted his teeth upon hearing this. So slavery still exists here. Hakama was also extremely indignant about this discrimination. But in reality, there's no big difference. They're just a little different from the majority, and yet they're treated so horribly. The little girl was furious. It's completely wrong. Jin smiled and praised her. You're a good kid. Suddenly, a person leaning on a staff walked towards them, blocking the path of the two travelers. The person's voice was a tired whisper begging for help. Help me. Then he collapsed. Hakama asked worriedly, Are you okay? The girl quickly ran to him. Those hands. Jin also slowly moved closer to observe. The person lay collapsed on the ground, panting heavily. Their breathing labored. Their body was covered in wounds and bruises. His ears were exactly like a human's with no sign of any change. Those ears are strange. He lay on the ground, filthy and panting. Jin stood there, hand on his chin, observing and thinking. His whole body is covered in bruises. These injuries are really serious. Hakama sat beside him, slowly helping him sit up. Are you all right? Jin held out a hand, channeling power. Try to bear with it for a moment. I'll heal you right now. Suddenly something flashed in the person's eyes. Model. He suddenly sat still, watching as the boy spoke. Don't move. One of his hands held a knife, the other wrapped around the little girl's neck in a threat. If you so much as twitch, I'll take this kid's life immediately. The three of them had pushed one another into this terrifying situation. Jin looked down calmly, thinking, so that's how it is. He saw the boy gritting his teeth, pointing a knife at Hakama. We carelessly walked right into your trap. His eyes glanced elsewhere as he thought, this means those people are somewhere nearby. In the distance, the blurry figure of a man approached. So there really is someone capable of coordinating with her. This person appeared with a full beard. You've completed your mission well. A man appeared with his henchman behind him. You followed my orders perfectly. Thoughts raced through Jin's mind. That's it, active camouflage technology. An image of a silhouette with arrows pointing to it appeared in his mind. It works by capturing images of the surrounding environment and using advanced nanoparticles to render the user invisible. He stood calmly before them, thinking, its only weakness is that movement can reveal traces of the camouflage, but they've managed to use it with extreme skill. The other guy still had his sword pointed right at Jin's face. For a lower life form, you're wearing a pretty sharp outfit. What country are you from? The tip of the sword pressed closer to Jin's neck. Stay calm. Don't you dare try anything. On the other side, Hakama struggled to get free, screaming, Sir Jin. But the man just stood there, taunting, You know exactly what will happen if you make a move. Don't you? Across from them, the girl was clutching her stomach. He raised his voice and shouted, Hakama! Only then did she quiet down. Jin then spoke. That kind of power? It was never meant to be used on people. Surely you're aware of that. The girl quickly shouted back, panicked. I'm not, but I'm scared. The man kept his sword pointed at Jin, but turned his head. We've hit the jackpot, boss. I can't believe that little brat possesses divine power, said one of his comrades standing beside him. You can use it too, can't you? He turned to answer. Who knows? The man replied angrily. What was that? And then kicked Jin hard in the stomach. Jin collapsed with a grunt as someone screamed, Sir Jin! The man kept his foot on him. Don't get cocky with me, you inferior creature. The other guy stood before him. Hey, be careful not to damage the precious merchandise. The man grimaced and replied, A lowlife like this won't sell for much anyway. He continued, But what if they have divine power? There's no way a bunch of lowly wretches could possess such an ability. Over there, Hakama thought, these men. Her face was filled with fear as she thought, they must be the bandits the Holy Knight mentioned, the human traffickers. That guy was slowly walking towards her, power glowing in his hand. All right, now time for a little nap. A thought crossed this girl's mind. If we just let ourselves get captured like this... The hand brimming with power drew closer to Hakama's face, causing her to shrink back in fear. We'll both be sold into slavery. The dark atmosphere slowly faded. Jin was right in front of her, calling out, Hakama, wake up! Hey, Hakama! The girl slowly responded, Sir Jin. Then she sat up with a start, terrified. His muscular frame was sitting beside her. Are you hurt anywhere? The girl turned to him. I'm fine. More importantly, it turned out they were in iron cages, and outside there were many other victims. Where are we being held? Then Jin turned his face away. This is the hideout of the ones who attacked us. He looked out at the victims in the other cages. It seems like everyone else they've captured is being held here too. Some of the people in there were just skin and bones. A poor green-haired girl was clutching her frail body. The two of them sat in their cage, filled with worry. Hakama then looked at him. But why are you naked, sir? Jin lowered his head and closed his eyes. They stripped me of my clothes. They must have found them too strange. Luckily, they left me my shorts. The girl sat there stunned. You don't seem worried about it at all. He looked away. Well, for most of my previous life, I was naked all the time anyway. The girl looked at him with an innocent expression. Let's put that aside for a moment. Why didn't you fight back then? Jin sat there silently listening to her. With your strength, you could have taken them down easily, Sir Jin. Over on the other side, a soldier had just opened the door, walking in with the boy. All right, let's get this over with. The two of them turned to look at the boy's dirty form. So you've been awake this whole time, huh? Hakama stood up, gripping the iron bars and yelling, You! The boy knelt down and passed 2 buns to the girl. I don't care if you hate me for this. Then he stood up nonchalantly and looked down. Because I never dared to hope that I'd be forgiven in the first place. Hakama could only grit his teeth, clinging to the iron bars as Jin spoke, grabbing his attention. It's truly so... boring. The boy looked down horrified. Then he responded like a true villain, sitting there and looking up at the sky filled with ambition. They would never waste time wondering whether they're hated or forgiven or anything of the sort. Then he slowly stood up, drawing the gazes of the two of them. All right then, let's begin. Jin gripped the iron bars of the cage, which terrified the boy. Then he stood in the hole he had so easily destroyed, much to the boy's surprise. Hakama stood behind him, watching as he dusted off his hands. I've been waiting patiently for you. No one can eavesdrop on our conversation here. The boy replied. Waiting for me? The boy's face filled with fear when he heard Jin. The most important person to you right now. Where are they being held? The boy leaned down cautiously. How did you know that? He slowly stepped out, showing his powerful hand. It was just a guess of mine. The boy was rendered speechless by the power emanating from him. At first, she even managed to fool me, because the bruises on her body were completely real. The boy, surprised, now looked at the bruises as Jin mentioned them. However, even villains wouldn't beat their own comrades, so cruelly just to use them. That's why I saw through the situation early on. The boy was amazed by his insight, realizing she was being threatened by them with violence, forced to follow their demands. Then his hands clasped together, trembling in fear, before he slowly began to speak. My younger brother, they took him, remembering the painful moment they were torn apart. And my parents, he shouted with bitterness. Those bastards brutally murdered them both. His hands clenched his shirt as tears streamed down his face. So I have to protect my brother's life, no matter the cost. Hakama stood behind Jin, watching him clench his fist as he listened to the boy. That's the only reason I did it. A terrifying look appeared on Jin's face as he heard of their crimes. What scum. The little girl next to him looked up at him. So did you let the bandits capture you on purpose just to rescue them? He replied, that was part of the plan. But he continued, villains are inherently stubborn and persistent. They're no different from stubborn grease stains. Another question arose. Grease stains. A guard was standing by the door. If you miss even one and let them escape, they will multiply and continue to cause more disasters. Those words rang out, making the guard look over in astonishment. That's why if you decide to eliminate them. Then right after that, Jin kicked hard from behind, sending both the door and the guard flying. He grabbed onto the doorframe he had just destroyed, his hand gripping it tightly as he stared with a terrifying face. You have to pull the weeds out by the root, leaving no trace behind. You must wipe them out completely and mercilessly. When it comes to scum like them, I understand them better than anyone. 1 billion years ago, in a bustling low-class city, a young, grimy djinn appeared looking at a news broadcast about the successful arrest of a drug lord. I was the same way. I always yearned to enact justice. A car stopped behind him as he stood in the street. Footsteps appeared right behind Jin, but I soon realized something. His eyes glanced calmly to the side. A world that still needs justice. 3 menacing thugs were standing there. Is actually just full of dregs like humanity, and they're multiplying everywhere. The leader, a cigarette in his mouth, lifted Jin up. If only I could have lived a normal life, that would have been ideal. But at that moment, his face was expressionless. But the circumstances I grew up in didn't allow for that. He was still in the man's grasp, so not long after, Jin simply raised one hand and bent the man's arm to the side. I crushed them. Then he stomped his foot straight onto the man's stomach, trampling him without mercy. Growing up, he remained just as strict, continuing to destroy them. Jin sat nonchalantly on the pile of people he had wiped out. I just kept on cleaning them up. Suddenly, someone stood before him as he sat on that mountain of bodies. Until one day someone said to me, this made him startle and scowl. Kagura reached out his hand as if to grab him. You were born in the wrong world? Returning to the scene from the last chapter, Jin was dragging a man across the ground. 2 guards stood there, gritting their teeth and backing away, stammering, "Stop it right now." Many other soldiers were already lying strewn across the floor. What in the world do you want? He kept asking as more of his comrades fell around him. How did you even manage to get in this far? Jin gave a terrifying smile right after. He immediately threw a man straight at them. The guard stood there, catching him in stunned horror. Then Jin rushed forward swiftly, launching an attack, but the guard could only stand there and watch in fear. A punch from Jin caved the man's face in as a voice from behind shouted, "You bastard! Who the hell are you?" He sat on the floor on the other side, cradling his comrade in his arms, terrified. The people locked in the iron cages had been freed. Pawaru looked clearly worried. That scream was... She wondered aloud, hastily and fearfully, turning to ask, "What kind of person is your companion anyway?" "A god." Hakama turned and answered calmly, "He's a guardian deity." "Yes, a god." The little girl looked up and said confidently, "Just leave it to Sir Jin. He'll take care of everything just fine." The little girl turned to look as they prepared to leave. "For now, just do as Sir Jin said. Get everyone out of here." Pawaru seemed worried, thinking, "Are we really going to make it out of here alive?" She gritted her teeth in hatred as she thought of him. But that bastard, he possesses an immense amount of holy power. There's no way he can win against him with brute force alone. Just then, that guy was on the ground, panicking. "Wait." Jin grabbed another man's head, holding it in front of him. "What is it you're craving, huh? Money, right?" The man laughed. "Was it fear? No." He pointed directly at the boy sitting in the iron cage. "Or perhaps you want a slave?" As he spoke, he looked at the pitiful boy, his younger self. "If that's the case, I'll offer you as many as you like." Jin glanced over without a word, then shoved him straight to the ground. Red syrup splattered out. "Are you done spouting all your nonsense?" The man sat there sweating and thinking, "What in the world is happening?" The man looked at him with terror, thinking, "Why is my divine magic so useless?" Jin took a menacing step closer to him. The man sat there gritting his teeth, thinking, "What kind of monstrous power does he possess?" As he approached, Jin said, "You're just a second-rate villain." The man was still listening to what he said. The real pros would have run away immediately. Jin looked down and frowned. "But amateurs like you always run your mouth underestimating your opponent, and you're always so sure you'll win." His next words made the man snap. "And then the moment you get a taste of failure, you start begging pathetically." Damn it, the man thought. Then he bolted for his life. "If it's come to this, then I have no other choice." The man's hand flipped a switch as he yelled, "It's not over. This isn't over yet." He smiled sinisterly as a door slid shut. A monster appeared from behind the door. Jin stood there, stunned, while the man boasted, "I went to great lengths to acquire this. At someone's request, you see. This huge, terrifying monster, with heavy footsteps. If sweet talk doesn't work, then I guess this is the only way." The man flashed a bright smile. "I'll make you—" The monster before Jin opened its mouth and roared, unleashing a wave of purple energy, and the man's words became a pathetic, shattered cry. Then it raised an arm. Jin cautiously glanced up, crossing his arms over his head. Just as it was about to strike, the man's face went slack. Turns out the monster's punch had been effortlessly blocked by his 2 hands. You see, I was born with an extraordinary body, he said, turning his head as he blocked the blow. Compared to normal people, it seems I have a few more muscle fibers than them. Then Jin pushed it straight up. He leaped up, blue energy swirling around his hand. I won't go easy on someone who's become corrupted. As he thrust his hand forward, a bright blue light flashed. And I'll be using my divine power too. Instantly, the monster melted into a puddle on the floor. It terrified the man to his core. Then Jin was standing before him. He can use divine power too, he thought. Then Jin spoke, his face completely nonchalant. So what do you plan to do next, huh? The man's face was covered in sweat, speechless. He clasped his hands together, trembling. Could you look the other way and spare me just this once? Before he could finish, Jin landed a punch that twisted the man's face. I can't. Jin put on his jacket. There. He turned and walked away, leaving the man on the floor. He sat there thinking, found my outfit. He then looked over at the iron cage with 4 children inside. I'm so sorry, but could you all please wait just a little longer? Jin's words were like a ray of hope for the 4 children. I'll get everyone out of here soon. He stood before a desk, picking up some files. But before that, I have a few things I need to investigate. It'll be useless if I can't gather evidence of their crimes. As he opened a drawer, he saw some papers. Oh, he sat on the desk holding a paper, thinking, this looks extremely suspicious. Strange characters appeared on the paper. Jin smiled. I see. But right after that, his mind filled with question marks as he read these lines. What in the world is this supposed to be about? I can't understand a single word. He stood there looking at the guy slumped on the floor. I guess I'll have to ask Hakama to teach me how to read the language of this era. He then knelt and touched the liquid from the monster. Still, what were they planning to do after capturing the corrupted ones? Waves of energy appeared as his hand made contact. It's time to find out the truth. Digital screens flickered to life around him. I'm going to access the cameras from the nanites floating around here. Jin sat in the middle of them, looking down, thinking any footage from the past week should still be saved in here. His gaze grew grim as he recalled a memory from the day before in the monster's containment area. The man stood behind his superior. But sir, how do you intend to handle such a large haul? His superior replied, that is not your concern. He gave a sinister smile. However, I think I'll let you in on one thing. He glanced up, his expression dangerous. Very soon in this country, a very interesting event is about to take place. In the present, Jin stood before the screen, frowning. The next day, in an old-fashioned village, the freed people were standing in formation. Hakama and Poweru were also standing there, looking around, when suddenly she flinched, having seen something. Nino ran over from Jin's direction as she called out, Nino, sis! The 2 sisters rushed toward each other, weeping. They held each other tightly as tears streamed down Poweru's face. Thank goodness. Oh, thank heavens. She took her sister's hand, looked up at him, and said, Sir, truly, thank you so very much. He stood before them and replied, I'm no god or anything, don't worry about it. Then Jin glanced to the side. By the way, let me ask. He looked toward the people being led away in a line under guard, the ones rounding up those bandits. Are they men of this region's lord? Hakama, standing nearby, answered, No, sir, they are not. They are from the association. I was the one who called them. The 2 stood there discussing Padaraku, the man standing over there. He is the head of this town's association. Jin asked, Is that so? The man turned to look at them. He then walked over. Are you the one who resolved this incident? Jin replied, That's right. Padaraku immediately raised a hand and bowed along with his men. My name is Padaraku, head of the association. I offer you my sincerest gratitude, Chief, for lending your aid. He then glanced up at the man standing there, thinking, to be able to face that many enemies without a single scratch. On the outside, he looks like he's from a low-ranked race, but my gut tells me... The thoughts flashed through his head. There's no way he's just some ordinary person. He then spoke up. Lately, we've received many reports about the damages related to this series of incidents. The association has been faced with countless requests to eliminate this band of bandits. Jin stood there and replied, So the local lord wasn't the one who sent troops to capture them, huh? Padaraku stood with his hands on his hips. You must be joking, sir. A lord doesn't have that much authority. An image of him kneeling before a superior appears with his narration. The only ones with the authority to handle these types of criminals are the members of the association who have sworn an oath to the king. He held out a hand as he continued. Even if the lord of this region, Lord Sapien, were to commit a crime, we would still be obligated to report his actions to his majesty, although something like that would never happen, of course. Jin put a hand to his chin, thinking, if I were to explain this in terms from 100,005 years ago, the Lord is like the mayor, and the association is like the police. His mind was filled with dreadful thoughts about the man. But Sabian... At that moment, he presented a scroll to the man. This is a document I recovered from one of those men. Perhaps it could be of some use to you. And as Padaraku unrolled and read it, he was stunned. This is a list of those who conducted secret dealings with the bandits. He continued reading. With this in hand, we can round up all of them. In a single sweep, Jin asked. Is the name of the local lord on that list by any chance? A scowling face appears as he hears the reply. Sir, please don't take my earlier joke seriously. Of course it's not on there, Jin thought to himself, I see. So he's quite a skilled villain. He looked over at a puzzled Powaru and thought, for now, there's not much more I can do. More importantly, Jin placed a hand on Powaru's sister's head and then turned to the man. What will happen to those freed slaves? What will their future be like? Padaraku replied immediately. For those who have a search request filed for them, or whose identities can be verified, the association will take responsibility for returning them to their homes. The two children stood there, bowing their heads sadly as they heard his answer. However, for those who don't fall into either of those categories, there is truly nothing we can do for them. Jin stood there thinking, if I remember correctly, these two lost both their parents. He then spoke up. Is there no kind of care facility here? Padaraku looked to the side. Absolutely none. We can only act as intermediaries to help them find work, but... He looked at the two poor children. Since these two children belong to a low-ranked race, I'm afraid finding them a job will be extremely difficult. Jin bowed his head and sighed, thinking I'd really like to help them out. But the two children just looked at each other, and he looked at them too, thinking, if no one is willing to hire them, I fear it will be hard to find them. Work. Suddenly, Jin realized something. No, wait a minute. He then said to the two children, if there was a place where both of you could work, would you be willing to go there? Powaru quickly replied, yes, sir. Do you already have a place in mind? Jin smiled. I do. He remembered what Agos once said. Later on, if you ever run into any trouble, just come find me. Jin's face looked a bit intimidating. I have the perfect place for you two. The next day at the Agos residence in the capital of the Cosmosia Kingdom, Agos's eyes were wide with shock. A man riding behind him asked, what is it? He was sitting on the horse in front. No, it's nothing. I just suddenly felt a chill down my spine. After that, he climbed down from the horse. Agos stood next to the horse, turned, and looked. This is far enough. He stood before his army. The long expedition was over. Thank you, everyone. Get some well-deserved rest today. Then he entered the building. All the maids bowed in unison. Welcome back, Master Agos. He turned to his steward. Any news? The steward glanced at a frightened maid behind him. Agos, sensing the tension, asked with his eyes still closed, what's happened? The steward beside him bowed his head. My sincerest apologies for bothering you when you must be exhausted. But he turned to him. Don't worry about it. The steward still looked worried. Agos glanced away and saw a girl standing above watching the two of them walk on. It was Milia watching with her arms crossed. Agos waved his hand dismissively. I understand. Thank you for the report. The steward bowed. It was my duty, sir. He ran a hand over his head and sighed, thinking to himself, the situation is worse than I imagined. He recalled the monster that had attacked the city's residents. An invader, right here in the capital. How did it manage to get in? Agos's brow furrowed. No. Someone must have deliberately let it in. He remembered the grounds of a certain building. The most suspicious thing was how they were so adamant about keeping unauthorized people out of Hanek's academy. In any case, an image of Jin walking with 3 children came to his mind. I need to find allies, and quickly. 3 days had passed since the bandit suppression campaign. Jin was walking down the road with Powaru, her younger brother, and Hakama. She turned to him with a worried frown. Are you really sure there's a suitable job for someone like me in the capital? He glanced at her. Don't worry so much. Jin kept her eyes on the ground. You already know how to read and write. And Powaru, you're even quite good with numbers. You'll definitely find work. He added, just have a little faith in yourself. His words made her look up, brightening. Yes, sir. Suddenly a voice called out, Jin, look! Hakama was pointing toward a castle in the distance. "We've arrived." Jin's face was filled with awe. All four of them gazed out at the magnificent kingdom below. "So this is the royal capital." Here the sky seemed to be dyed a rosy pink. They all stared in wonder, especially Pawaru. "Wow, this place is so busy and full of life." Hakama pointed toward a stall on the other side. The capital relies heavily on imported goods, so products from every region end up coming here. The people from Kadama village often make the long journey to sell their local specialties here, too. Jin glanced at the young girl. "I've heard of that before." He glanced at the odd bunch beside him. "I see. What an interesting place." The insect tribe. He saw two other types of people as well. So many different races and cultures converge here. It's only natural that such a place would give rise to unique developments. He turned his gaze to a stall. These are all items imported directly from the neighboring country. The city is also kept incredibly clean, and the security seems to be very reliable as well. But then he glanced aside and saw something. And yet, across the way, a well-dressed man stood before a group of homeless people. He frowned, thinking, I suppose every era has its own set of problems. Milia was standing behind him. When did she get there? Meanwhile, he looked down at Hakama. When do you start at the academy? The girl looked up. Next week. Milia stood there watching them as he replied, Then we still have a little time to prepare. The girl added, Enrollment takes place right after the exams are over, sir. She thought to herself, so she wants to enroll in Hanek's academy. She covered her mouth with her fan, her eyes darting toward them. A little brat like that. And a man from some lower race, no less. That evening, one of the girls stood before their new house. The room was brightly lit. Pawaru and Hakama were happily jumping on the bed together. Jin sat on her own bed. We finally found a place. To get a decent night's rest. The little girl lying beside her replied, Yeah, we did. He stood there, hand to his mouth, thinking. All right, the group has finally made it to the royal capital. So, what's my next move? He held a pouch of gold in his hand. No matter what, I'm going to need money to survive in this day and age. Suddenly, Hakama walked over and playfully placed the money pouch on her head. It made him think, we got a reward for taking out those bandits, but this money won't last forever. Not to mention I still have to give a portion of it to the former slaves. An image of a tired Pawaru, looking after the others, came to mind. On top of that, there's the issue of finding stable work for these two kids. He thought of Agos. Meeting with him would be the quickest solution, but without an introduction. Well, I'm afraid it'll be difficult to meet him right away. Jin stroked his chin, his eyes darting about. Then he got out of bed. Perhaps I should start by conducting a thorough investigation into the fallen ones of this era. He remembered those thugs from the other day, especially now that someone is plotting to use them for dark purposes. Jin stood before the window, lost in thought. The fallen ones are an incredibly terrible menace. I absolutely cannot let them run rampant. He glanced down at the bustling scene below. There's no way I'll let that horrifying era repeat itself. Suddenly, Jin turned to Hakama. What do people in this country usually do when they want to look into or research a particular subject? The little girl rested her chin on her hands while lying on the bed. They'll find someone to ask, find a teacher, or read all sorts of books. Then she flopped down. However, books here are extremely expensive. Back in Kodama village, we had to share the few precious books we could get our hands on. Hakama looked up. But here in the capital, there's a huge library. You can absolutely go there to look up information. Jin brought a hand to his mouth. There's a library here. Then he looked up, thinking, well, that's incredibly convenient. I'll definitely make the most of that place. Who knows, I might even find some kind of clue about the researcher facility Kagura left behind. A pink-haired girl sat there looking cheerful. I'm terribly sorry, but you are not permitted to use the facilities here. The four of them were stunned to hear her words. Because books are considered national assets, we cannot allow just anyone to enter freely, she continued. Access is limited to students whose abilities have been recognized by the academy, the instructors, and the nobles living in the capital. Jin sighed. So that's how it is. Hakama, standing beside him, said nonchalantly, Besides, you don't even know how to read yet, sir. It was only then that Jin suddenly thought, that's right. I still don't know how to read. He recalled Hakama and Pawaru teaching him in the forest. Everyone's been teaching me lately, but I still need more time before I can become proficient. He covered his face with a grimace and sighed, thinking, what am I supposed to do now? But behind them, two figures in heavy cloaks were talking. That's them, right? The other one reached out a hand and replied, The low-class species accompanied by those kids. That's definitely them. Suddenly a voice called out, making him turn to look. Got a minute, huh? He had just turned when a fist came flying at him, but Jin easily caught the punch. His expression grew a little more fearsome. Oh, you people have a rather unique way of saying hello. The guy was still grinning brightly. And here I was thinking the security was supposed to be good here. A golden light flared between their clasped hands. Then Jin released his grip, causing the man's hand to fly upwards. With a flash of golden light, it shot up into the sky, surprising everyone. But the man was still smiling cheerfully as he held out his hand. You're gravely mistaken. Your instincts are sharp, pal. Powaru's brother held her tightly, and she thought in fear, how dare they use divine power right in the middle of the city like this? Jin stood his ground and asked, Can you tell me what your purpose is? The man held out a hand and replied, Let's just say a certain somebody finds you lot to be a real eyesore. Jin's eyes revealed his thoughts. So someone hired them to come here. He placed a hand on his chin, thinking, Then again, this is actually working out perfectly for me. The two men laughed smugly. If you agree to disappear from this capital right now, then you won't have to worry about being threatened every single day. Got it. Jin immediately replied, When the situation becomes truly dangerous, I'll consider it. The man paid him no mind and threw another punch. Is that so? But Jin's hand clamped down hard on his wrist. The man's face froze, his expression changing. Then Jin simply threw him with a gentle flick. He landed flat on the ground, the impact so jarring it felt like his head would pop off. The other guy's hand was still bound by a golden power, this bastard. He spewed fire from behind Jin, who appeared to be engulfed in the blaze. This brought a smile to the attacker's face, but his joy was short-lived as Jin walked out from the smoke and reached for him. Jin grabbed his collar with one hand and effortlessly lifted him into the air. As the man's body trembled uncontrollably, Jin said, If you really want to pose a proper threat, come back when you're stronger. He readied his fist. But that's only if you still have the guts to challenge me again. Dangling in the air, the man thought in terror. This guy, isn't he supposed to be a low-class species? Just as this was happening, a loud shout suddenly came from the side. That's enough. All of you freeze. Don't move. Karina appeared frowning with annoyance. Honestly, I can't even get any peace on my day off. How dare you start a brawl right in the middle of the street? They all stared in confusion as the little girl pointed her sword at them and shouted, I'm throwing all of you in jail. Prepare yourselves. The girl's loud shout made Jean drop the guy he was holding and turn to look. It seems causing a little chaos finally paid off. Karina pointed a panicked finger at him. You're that low-class species from the other day, aren't you? Karina pointed straight at his face and shouted, It's you, that inferior race creature from the other day! The girl's disdain was clear from her face to her eyes. Then Karina aimed her spear straight at Jin. You've got some nerve. Causing trouble the moment you set foot in the capital. The girl, still full of arrogance, declared, Indeed. The lower class will always be the lower class. There are things you should know your limits on what you can and can't do. But then another person's voice cut in. That girl began to hesitantly recount the details. Excuse me for interrupting, but I happened to be passing by and saw the whole thing. These people were actually the ones who were suddenly attacked by that group. Her words made Karina freeze. I believe their actions were purely in self-defense. A moment later, a familiar voice rang out. Well, he looks very familiar. After looking at the guy, Karina turned and asked the others, And you people, you're students from Hannes Academy, aren't you? After some conversation, the girl sighed, looking bored. Just as I expected. I hope that young lady has nothing to do with this. Hearing this, Jin asked, What young lady? While ordering her subordinates, Karina replied, Hurry and take them away. That's our internal affair. You don't need to concern yourself with it. Seeing Karina's actions, he was surprised. So the Holy Knights have to do patrols too? I thought that was a job for the guild. The girl put on a cold expression and answered, This capital is vast. We're just contributing to maintaining public order. But her inner thoughts betrayed her. To be honest, I was just passing by coincidentally, while looking for a snack. Suddenly, the girl's gaze turned serious again. But still, Karina silently glanced over, assessing him. This guy's power is truly formidable, and those students from earlier were no slouches either. Then the girl turned to leave, signaling her farewell. All right, then. Try not to cause any more trouble in the capital. Suddenly, Jin called out loudly to her, Wait! If it's not too much trouble, I'd like you to take me somewhere. Karina turned her head and asked inquisitively, You want me to take you somewhere? The sky had grown dark. Now at the Agos mansion, Jin sat in a chair and spoke with sincerity. Please hire us. His words made Agos freeze. Didn't you tell me when we met that I should come find you if I needed help? He voiced his question. It seems you have more people with you than the last time we met, don't you? After hearing this, Jin answered calmly. Something unexpected just came up. He slowly recounted the events. We ran into that band of thieves you warned me about. I saw they were holding people captive, so I stepped in to rescue them. Agust, full of worry, asked for more news. And what about the thieves? Hearing that Jin reported exactly what he'd done. I gave them a good beating. After that, I handed the rest over to the guild to handle. Hearing this, he could only express his understanding. I see. Meanwhile, a doubt surfaced in Agus's mind. Did he really take them all down by himself? Thinking this, he asked a question. Why did you decide to help these girls? Jin calmly spoke with him. They have no relatives left. They're the ones you people call the lower class. His gaze, full of gentleness, fell upon the two children next to him. I thought I should at least try to find them a job. August spoke with some suspicion. I don't think you have any responsibility to take care of them. And for them. Jin calmly replied, It's just my principle. He was serious with every word. Regardless of the reason, I saved their lives. And I don't do things halfway. I will take responsibility for this to the very end. August looked surprised to hear that while Powaru and the boy were incredibly grateful. After a moment of thought, he nodded in agreement. Very well. The two of them can stay and work here at the mansion. She joyfully asked again just to be sure. Really, sir? However, August had his own intentions. But I have one condition. His voice rang out slowly. I want you to take on the role of an instructor. Jin was utterly astonished by this request. An instructor? A short while later, Powaru and the boy had changed into work clothes. Jin nodded in satisfaction upon seeing their appearance. You two really look the part, don't you? Full of gratitude, she bowed respectfully to Agos. Lord Agos, we are eternally grateful. Seeing this, he replied gently, There's no need to thank me. Then Agos turned to instruct his staff. I'm entrusting their training to you two. You are absolutely forbidden from discriminating against them just because they are of the lower class. The two of them immediately complied. We will obey. Before leaving, Powaru and the other waved to Jin. Thank you so much, sir. On the way, he was the first to speak, asking, So what about that offer to be an instructor? I'm sure you have some other motive. You're right, Agos replied calmly while leading the way. You're very perceptive. That will be very helpful for the job. Because at that moment his eyes showed a clear seriousness. Even though I'm not sure about your background, I want to believe that you are the right person for this favor. In truth, what Agos wanted to ask was, I want you to conduct an undercover investigation inside Hanasik Academy. Hearing this, John's expression turned grave. What in the world is going on? He slowly revealed a shocking secret. Right now, this kingdom is being targeted by many factions vying for power. After hearing this, a confused Jin asked in return, Doesn't this place have a king to rule it? At this thought, Agos's face grew somber as he replied, His Majesty is gravely ill and doesn't have much time left. Because of that, the war for succession has already begun, silently in the shadows. Not only that, he pointed out another problem. There are those with no claim to the throne who are plotting to take over this kingdom. Agos's hand clenched in anger as he spoke. They are using illegal invaders and dragging innocent people into their vile schemes. After hearing the whole story, Jin remembered something. I see. So it's not just that local lord we need to be wary of. His voice rang out clearly. Dangerous people like that are hiding and operating secretly right here in the capital. We need to find their den as quickly as possible. Jin then continued the thought. And the most suspicious place is Hanasik Academy, isn't it? He did not deny it. That's exactly right. Just then, Agos stood before a door and knocked. We're going in. As he opened the door, he explained to Jin, She will be the one to guide you inside the academy. Inside the room, someone had been sitting there for a long time. Let me introduce you. This is my younger sister who is currently studying at Hanasik Milia Anton. Agos raised his hand and began to introduce him to her. Milia, this is... Suddenly, Milia stood up and cut him off. Brother. She stared at them arrogantly. Don't tell me you're planning to entrust the secret mission you mentioned the other day to this lowlife. He hurriedly shouted at her, Milia, that's incredibly rude of you. But Milia's attitude was fiercely defiant. What's so rude about it? Isn't the very existence of his lowly kind an insult in itself? She gently waved her fan back and forth between the two of them. I'll say nothing of the woman who looks like a country bumpkin, but this task cannot be entrusted to a lesser being. A commoner. Witnessing all this, Jin found it a little amusing. What a prejudiced young lady. I'm truly sorry. Please don't pay any mind to what she says. Karina came up close and whispered to him. Although the young lady is talented, she holds a deep-seated animosity towards those of the lesser races. After hearing that Jin gave his opinion, I see. You're not so different from her, are you? Just then, Melia fanned herself as she turned to her brother. Do you understand, brother? She listed her reasons for objecting. This isn't just a simple infiltration mission. He also has to fulfill all the responsibilities of an instructor. Finally, Melia concluded with one sentence. I don't believe a lesser being could possibly be qualified to teach others. Or does he actually possess the necessary credentials? Just then Hakama spoke up, exposing him. Jin can't even read. This truth made him feel embarrassed. Don't say that. She suddenly emphasized the word, what? Melia was disappointed with his qualifications. Then he's completely unqualified. This isn't even worth discussing. Suddenly another voice rang out, continuing the thought. But the young girl spoke her mind sincerely. There are many things that only Jin can teach. Jin is truly more extraordinary than any of us. She fell silent, carefully evaluating Jin once more. A moment later, Melia arrogantly swept past him. It seems he has enough power to suppress and discipline the students, I suppose. Before leaving, her eyes were ice cold as she warned, but to be a teacher requires more than just brute force. And with that, Melia closed the door and left. Korea wearily rubbed her head and spoke up. First about those students on the way here. I'd already guessed. That young lady was the one behind them. Agos, on the other hand, looked completely helpless. I am so sorry. I will be sure to discipline her sternly. Jin was very understanding and told him, don't worry about it. He quickly changed the subject back to the job at hand and asked, besides, as an instructor, what subject do you intend for me to teach exactly? Agos quickly answered the question. It's spirit magic. He calmly pointed out what he knew, and based on my assessment, he's extremely well-versed in it. I'm right, aren't I? Jin was silent for a moment. Then he opened his mouth and asked, so what part of spirit magic should I be teaching? He responded immediately. Just teaching the basics will be enough. Agos listed the necessary spirit arts. Fire starter, electric discharge, ice formation, and healing. If you can perform even just 2 of these 4 basic techniques, then you'll meet the requirements. With a deadpan expression, he uttered some rather frustrating words. Is that all? It's that simple? And it worked, leaving Agos stunned. He asked, what do you mean, is that all? Agos asked in disbelief. Don't tell me you can also use special spirit arts that only a select few are capable of, can you? Jin suddenly started thinking about a strange term in that sentence. Special spirit arts. After mulling it over, he understood. Wait a minute. So that bandit is actually considered one of the elites in this era. As Jin thought this, the corners of his mouth suddenly curled into a smirk. How interesting! Finally, he made his decision. All right, then. I think I'll change the common notions of this era a bit. Just like that, in the blink of an eye, a new semester was about to begin. A week had passed at Hannes Academy. The atmosphere of the entrance exam day was buzzing here. The applicants seemed very boisterous. Among them, Hakama had also come to take the exam. She seemed very focused this time. Rutman warmly welcomed Agos and Jin into the school. Oh my, it's a great honor for us to have you personally escort them here. He was being polite. Seeing you here, a member of the Holy Knights, I'm guessing Unit 7 must be very busy. Please don't worry about it. It's simply our turn to carry out the mission. Hearing this, Jin, who was standing behind them, grew suspicious. Our turn. Agos didn't hide anything and calmly explained to him. Once a year, the Holy Knights take turns selecting a member to serve as a special instructor for this academy. And this year, that responsibility has been entrusted to Unit 7. I see. His words made Jin even more pensive. Am I really suited for this job? Jin was brooding over everything. His contemplation was caught by Rutman, who turned to look at him. Rutman then led the 2 of them to a room and said, This way, please. He opened the door to the room and introduced the person inside to them. The headmistress and the board of directors are waiting for you inside. Inside the room, the headmistress was looking at them with a cunning glint in her eyes. Agos stepped inside and bowed respectfully to her. It's been a long time, headmistress. The headmistress then let out a small smile, praising Agos's talent. Ever since you graduated as the top student, you quickly became a knight. Quite an outstanding one in such a short time, wouldn't you say? While the other two were talking, Jin just kept observing the room. Thank you for agreeing to assist us. It is a responsibility I must fulfill. The headmistress leaned back in her chair and said in a calm voice, I've also heard a few rumors. Hearing her insinuations, Agos's expression didn't change. Not only have you been solving problems with spirit arts, but you've also gotten dragged into internal faction disputes. Her voice was calm, but she was actually threatening him. I understand that you all can't mobilize much manpower because everyone is very busy. The headmistress stared straight ahead with a sharp gaze. She let out a criticism. However, that does not mean you people have the right to be disrespectful in this academy. In fact, the person she'd been alluding to this whole time was Jin. There was no doubt about it. Don't tell me you people are letting this guy be an instructor here.
Are you?
All three of them were giving Jin dirty looks. Seeing their attitude, he could only sigh helplessly. Please rest assured. Agos bowed once more, coming to Jin's defense. His abilities far surpass anyone else in my Unit 7. I myself can vouch for his talent, at least when it comes to practical combat skills. After thinking with a grim face for a moment, the headmistress finally made her decision. If you're so certain, then I'll tentatively accept it as the truth. Just as the headmistress was getting a headache over this, Gita, who was beside her, spoke up. But how are we supposed to handle this? Headmistress, I strongly object to this. He pointed right in Jin's face, spewing insults at him in this sacred and historic academy. There was no precedent for allowing an inferior race to teach. Gita, believing himself to be of a superior class, was vehemently opposed to this. This position is not a place for someone of a lower class. Are you trying to insult our academy? His words seemed to sway the headmistress. She wanted to hear Ruthman's opinion as well. Lord Gita has given his opinion. Lord Ruthman, what is your view? Ruthman pretended to ponder for a moment before stating his thoughts. I agree with him. Most of our students come from noble families. He voiced the thoughts of the students at the academy. Allowing an inferior to impart knowledge would surely be met with fierce resistance. From the students and even the faculty. The headmistress was satisfied after hearing this. She feigned a helpless sigh and explained, You see, my thoughts are essentially the same as theirs. But then the headmistress gave Jin an opportunity. However, let's allow him to present his case. Hearing this, Jin slowly stepped forward. He bowed respectfully to the headmistress and introduced himself. Forgive me for my late introduction. I am from Kodama village. My name is Jin Sidhu. Seeing Jin's demeanor, the headmistress silently assessed him. Despite the terrible humiliation, he remained strangely calm. I completely understand your concerns. Jin replied confidently, his gaze sharp. However, I'd like to ask a small question. His question made Gita and Ruthman freeze. He posed his question. Am I unworthy of being an instructor simply because I belong to an inferior race? Even the headmistress leaned in, wanting to hear Jin's question. Or is it because I lack the actual skill? The headmistress, acting magnanimous, explained with eloquent words. Obviously, it's the latter. As long as you have the skill, nothing else matters. At the same time, she issued a challenge to Jin. So can you prove your abilities? August seized the opportunity and suggested, if that's the case, why don't we test him a little? They all went out to the training grounds together. At the Hanak Academy's Spirit Arts training ground, Gita stood facing Jin and began to explain, because today is the entrance exam, there are almost no students around. He acted noble, pretending to reassure Jin. At least you'll avoid being embarrassed in front of a crowd. Jin just watched in silence, not bothering to reply. The headmistress stood between the two and announced the rules. The rules are simple. You two will fight using only spirit arts. The headmistress pretended to ask, but she was actually forcing Jin into a corner. You're here to apply for the spirit arts instructor position, so seeing your power firsthand is the best way to evaluate you. Isn't that right? The students who saw the scene couldn't help but be curious. What's going on? I heard there's going to be a friendly match. Milia listened to the chatter. She couldn't help but glance over. I think this is the first time I've ever seen Lord Gita fight. Hearing their nonsensical chatter, Jin cursed inwardly. What a waste of time. The headmistress and the others watched them intently from the sidelines. All right then. Let's see what a member of the inferior race can really do. Even Agust couldn't hide his nervousness watching Jin. This is the first time I've seen him fight firsthand. He knew all too well what the physical abilities of the lower-class races were like. Those of the lower-class races are usually physically very weak. Even if they possess divine power, they can only unleash a tiny fraction of it. And that was it, because he knew this. A guest could only pray silently for Jin. I just hope my decision wasn't a mistake. Are you ready? Gita gave a sinister smile and spoke. All right. He didn't hesitate, immediately launching a fireball at Jin. I'll take the first shot. But Jin easily dodged Gita's attack. The students watching from the sidelines couldn't help but be amazed. Gita glanced at the group of students, feeling even more pleased with himself. It's not many, but there are still a few students watching. He began gathering his power again to prepare another attack. Bolts of lightning shot out from Gita, flying straight ahead, but no matter how powerful this attack was, Jin easily leaped up and dodged it all. Gita, attacking Jin with all his might, sneered inwardly, "Is running all you know how to do? Truly inferior trash." He was still very confident in his own power. I may not have become a holy knight, but I was the valedictorian of this academy. Gita had no intention of letting Jin off unleashing his special move. You're no match for me. Jin, on the other side, barely had time to breathe before he had to prepare to dodge Gita's next attack. But no matter how formidable Gita's strike was, Jin avoided it with ease. Honestly, I shouldn't have to use this power to deal with a mere human. But at this point, Jin was tired of just dodging his attacks. I have no other choice. He began to use his own power. Gita's provocations had forced his hand. I'll show you all just a fraction of it then. A giant sphere of power appeared right above Gita's head. The red sphere crushed Gita into the ground. The headmaster and Russman's eyes widened in disbelief at what was happening before them. Even Agos was no exception. He couldn't hide the surprise on his face. Melia couldn't conceal her astonishment when she saw Jin's technique. Gita was crushed into the ground, unable to get up. I'm starting to have my doubts about this. What is this? What in the world just happened? Jin slowly approached him and said mockingly, I simply adjusted the gravity around you a little bit. That kind of spirit art? Have you all never heard of it? He gave a sinister, sarcastic smile. It seems I'll have a lot to teach at this academy. Jin tightened his gloves and declared to everyone here, not just lessons for the students, but lessons for all of you as well. Gita was crushed by Jin, unable to move. He struggled to lift his head, gritting his teeth as he glared at Jin. Jin just calmly snapped his fingers. After his snap, the sphere crushing Gita released him. Gita still hadn't learned his lesson, and continued to criticize Jin. What kind of trick did you just pull, huh? It was clearly spirit arts, don't you recognize it? Gita's shame turned to rage. He pointed a finger repeatedly at Jin's face and yelled, I've never heard of such a strange spirit art. You must have used some cheap trick. Hey, look at him! Seeing his behavior, the headmaster and Russelman could only feel helpless. This is truly... The two of them seemed to be completely won over by Jin's power. It seems like it's all over. I suppose so. The students outside who had just witnessed the fight couldn't help but whisper amongst themselves. In her heart, Melia had already guessed the secret to Jin's technique. There's no doubt about it. Those are spirit arts of a very high level. Did you see that with your own eyes? What in the world was that monstrous thing? She still couldn't believe it was real, constantly trying to justify her thoughts. How is that possible? Unlike us, who evolved with the protection of the spirits, that inferior race shouldn't possess any divine power at all. Melia glanced forward, her eyes blazing with hostility. Her attention was focused on Jin, her heart full of doubt. So what is he? Just who is that man? Please calm yourselves. A dignified voice echoed through the school grounds. 1 week later. This academy doesn't just provide knowledge from books. Its core objective is, the headmistress stood at the podium explaining to all her students, to train true warriors, those capable of annihilating the rotten. Faced with her threat, some were confident, while others were afraid. Anyone who cannot keep up with the educational pace will be mercilessly expelled from the academy. In addition, the headmistress also made an enticing offer. However, for those who complete the program, joining the ranks of the Holy Knights will no longer be a distant dream. She stood authoritatively at the podium, reminding everyone, all results depend on your own abilities. Milia's group stood on a higher level. And looking down, they couldn't help but comment. We have quite a few new students this year, don't we? That's right, it seems a large number of them are commoners. While Melia was lost in thought, someone called out, Hey, you! The orange-haired student approached her to chat. Melia, it's rare to see you at the entrance ceremony. I thought you were the type who never cared about others. The two stood there talking. And what about you? If there was some prestigious noble among the freshmen, you'd want to suck up to them to save face, wouldn't you? Suddenly, the orange-haired boy looked down below in alarm. What's going on over there? His attention was drawn to Jin sitting below. Why is someone from an inferior race sitting so brazenly in the seats reserved for instructors? Simply because he is a professor. Melia, having guessed the orange-haired young man's thoughts from his expression, wanted to know how he felt. What? From your perspective, what is your assessment of that man? That orange-haired young man, with a bewildered face, just stammered. In any case, Melia maintained her haughty attitude as she assessed Jin. He's just someone from a low-class race, that's all. Perhaps you're right. Sitting below Jin was also observing his surroundings. He glanced at everything, his mind calculating. This school is truly massive. This investigation will definitely take a considerable amount of time. Jin saw the students looking at him with faces that were less than friendly, and a goal formed in his mind. Even so, those glares are quite irritating. The first thing I need to do is get rid of this inferior race label. Even the instructor next to him seemed wary of sitting with Jin. If this keeps up, I'll attract more attention than necessary. Not to mention, with this investigation, I'm already becoming the most suspicious person in this academy, and so Jin already had a plan. First, I need to earn their respect. For now, everything is still peaceful at this academy. Gita at the podium began to introduce today's lesson. Now we will begin our class on spirit arts. He was very confident in this group of his students, and to ensure you aren't surpassed by the new recruits, you must all remain vigilant. I know this might be a concern for you, since you are, after all, the elite class. But then, seeing only a few scattered students, Gita let out a smug smile and said, "Yes, that's exactly what I wanted to talk about." Gita then feigned anger, scolding them. What is the meaning of this? Why is attendance so sparse today? Have you all lost your passion? Melia, sitting near the front, sighed helplessly. She knew exactly what was happening. It was only to be expected. Even while scolding them, Gita was inwardly smug, as if anyone would want to listen to a lesson taught by someone from the lower class. He himself was the reason for today's absences. I made sure to spread the news everywhere that today someone from a low-class race would be teaching. And yet Gita put on a bright, welcoming smile and invited Jin up to lecture. What a bother. Very well. Well then, let's begin. Sir Jin, please introduce yourself. Without hesitation, Jin stood before everyone. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Jin. Hearing this, the students below were clearly displeased. I've been assigned here to instruct you on the fundamentals of spirit arts. I look forward to working with all of you. Just then, an orange-haired student crossed his arms and challenged Jin. Do you really think you're qualified for this? Jin noted his attitude and simply replied calmly, That's for you to judge for yourselves. Not only was Jin not angry, he even made an offer. If you feel that what I teach is worthless, you are free to leave my class. Then his expression darkened as he warned them, but there is one absolute rule you must remember. Jin looked at the power in his own hand as he reminded everyone there. You are absolutely forbidden from using this power to harm others. He then proceeded to teach them what he knew about the nature of spirit arts. It has the ability to nullify the super-regenerative powers of the corrupted. Jin used concrete examples to teach the students. However, this suppressive effect has no impact on the human body. You will only be inflicting simple physical wounds on them. Do you know why that is? With a solemn expression, Jin clenched his fist and declared, because this power was created for the sole purpose of destroying the corrupted. His overwhelming presence made even Melia wary. Therefore, I demand that you never abuse this power. Hearing this, a student in the class laughed and mocked Jin. Are you an idiot? Power is just power, nothing more. The gray-haired guy now had a provocative look on his face, deliberately taunting Jin. I was curious what a low-class being like you could possibly teach, and you're telling us not to use in spirit arts. His words made the whole class burst out laughing. Maybe you're just scared of us because you're a powerless member of a lowly race of yours. Isn't that right? And with that, the class started whispering and mocking him right in front of Jin. Jin wasn't surprised by their attitude. He just sighed softly and said, If you think I'm powerless, then prove it. This time it was Jin's turn to provoke the gray-haired student. What? Use the strongest attack you have on me. Jin then raised the stakes with a challenge. If you can give me even a single scratch, I promise I'll disappear from this place and never come back. Upon hearing this, the gray-haired student burst into wild laughter. Without holding back, he immediately unleashed his power. Don't come crying to me when you regret this, you low-class trash. It's not too late to back down, you know. Seeing that power, Gita could only clutch his head and scold the boy. Hey, you idiot, stop right now. Are you trying to hit me too? The gray-haired boy unleashed his power, attacking Jin. "Take this!" A massive wave of energy shot like an arrow toward Jin, striking the exact spot where he stood. It created a massive shockwave. The gray-haired student waited smugly for the result. Suddenly, a small dagger flew out from the smoke, whizzing right past him. The dagger embedded itself deep into the wall behind him, shattering a large section. Jin slowly emerged from the smoke. "If I had truly wanted to," he said, "you would have died just now." And that was the lesson he wanted to teach the gray-haired student. Judging others by their appearance is a fatal mistake. The orange-haired student, having witnessed the whole thing, was still stunned, his mind filled with questions. What was that? Was that even spirit arts? The entire academy was now wary of Jin's power. Just then he spoke up. "You believed I was weak simply because I came from a lower race, didn't you? But the truth is, I am far stronger than you." With a clear air of authority, Jin spoke. "So then, what do you think you should properly call me? Let me give you the answer." That last attack served as a lesson to establish Jin's dominance, and with that he made his declaration. A slight smirk appeared on his lips as he emphasized, "Professor Jin, does anyone here truly understand the necessary conditions to activate the spirit arts?" He looked down at everyone below and specifically pointed out you, the one who just attacked me. "Answer my question." The student stood up, flustered and anxious. It's simply based on one's own imagination, isn't that right?" He immediately summoned a spell, explaining as he focused his thoughts. "Mages concentrate and raise their spiritual power, then they transmit the image in their mind to the spirits to give them form. Isn't that the most basic knowledge?" Hearing that answer, the corner of Jin's mouth turned up. Imagination does indeed play a very important role. However, it is not the essential condition to activate them. As he finished speaking, he summoned a ball of energy in his palm. The spirits will only truly unleash their power after they receive a specific wavelength frequency. Upon hearing this, the student's face went pale with shock. "A wavelength frequency?" Jin continued to explain. "Fundamentally, there are a total of 8 main types of wavelengths." He carefully simulated and explained them. Incineration. In his other hand, Jin immediately summoned a second power. Discharge. Then he continued summoning a third energy. Healing. And so Jin gradually summoned the final energy. Freezing. These are all powers that you should have mastered by now. The students' faces froze. Jin continued his explanation. Besides the types I just mentioned, he summoned another form of magic. There is also the ability to manipulate gravity. There is. In his other hand, a radiant magic appeared. Control light, control air pressure, and the ability that I used just now. After listing all these magical powers, Jin concluded, which is spatial protection, to be able to apply these fundamental principles. Witnessing this scene, Jita was astonished, thinking to herself, "Can you really master all 8 types of spirit arts?" Jin looked at the spirit arts in his hands with a triumphant look. "It's just like how you launched that electric spear at me earlier." Visualization is an indispensable element. After a brief pause, a faint smile appeared on his lips. "And now," Jin crossed his arms with a composed demeanor, "shall we begin the official lecture?" Time passed until the class ended. Jin strode alone down the hallway, thinking to himself, "All right, now that it's come to this, I need to begin my investigation within this massive academy." But just then a few students standing nearby whispered, "That professor." Jin's eyes suddenly noticed the students' attitudes. "Everywhere I go, I see students bustling about. I still haven't found any truly suspicious locations." Seeing Milia standing nearby, an idea flashed through Jin's mind. Perhaps I should search for the restricted areas where students aren't allowed. His eyes narrowed as he glanced over at her. As if her sixth sense was warning her, Milia also looked towards him. Jin pretended not to notice and walked past calmly, but Milia quickly called out, "Hey, you! Just who in the world are you?" He turned back and replied with a sarcastic tone. "So you're not just some low-level race member, are you?" She retorted angrily. "You're definitely no ordinary person, I have to admit that." After saying that, Milia's expression turned gloomy and frustrated. "A lower-class being shouldn't be able to use all types of spirit arts." Hearing this, Jin looked bewildered. "I just explained this in class. As long as you have the ability to separate the wavelengths, anyone can do it." Milia sighed as if she couldn't be bothered. "Don't talk about it so casually." She glanced over, hearing other students whispering, "All types of spirit arts at his command." For real, hearing that, Milia asserted firmly, "If it were really that easy to do, you wouldn't be attracting this much attention." and with that she turned to leave. Let's find somewhere else to talk. Soon the two of them arrived at a deserted place with no one around. Melia suddenly turned back and asked, "Well, are you ready to answer my question now?" Jin remained calm. "It's simple. For the past 100,000,005 years, I was an ancient being sleeping soundly in Kodama village." She walked on, retorting, "You're really good at joking." Melia stopped and spoke in a serious tone. "Then let me ask again. What were you doing 100,000,005 years ago?" Finding the question strange, Jin was a bit puzzled. A lot happened back then. "I was a secret agent." Melia frowned in confusion. "A secret agent? What's that?" He smiled and explained, "It's someone who serves the nation. I've fought against countless villains." Jin recalled that time from long ago. An image vaguely formed in his mind. Even though it happened 100,000,005 years ago, he remembered carefully observing everyone as they discussed their strategy. Remembering the night attack, emotions welled up inside him. "But I can still recall it as clearly as if it were yesterday." Reminiscing now, Jin let out a soft, nostalgic smile. How nostalgic? After hearing that Melia, still doubtful, asked again, "I'm just wondering why someone like you would end up in a long sleep for 100,000,005 years like that." He answered calmly and frankly, "Because I failed." Jin slowly continued his story. "I used to think I could handle everything on my own if I just tried hard enough." He emphasized, "And the price I paid was losing everything in complete helplessness. I accepted this position as an instructor, with the hope that all of you students would help me when I run into trouble." Hearing this, Melia inwardly wondered just how much of what he said was actually true. After finishing his story, Jin asked blankly, "By the way, where are we heading?" She walked ahead with a calm demeanor. "In any case, I suppose I should fulfill my duty as a guide." A moment later, Melia led him to an old room. It was dilapidated, dusty, and covered in cobwebs. "We're here." Jin entered with a hint of suspicion. "What is this place?" Melia explained bluntly. "This is the room where instructors store materials for their classes." Hearing that, he stroked his chin thoughtfully. "So this is just a storage room." Jin began to look around the place. Suddenly, he spotted an owl statue on a bookshelf. As his eyes met the statue, Jin's gaze narrowed as if he sensed something strange. He immediately turned to Melia and asked, "Why did you bring me here?" She took out a stack of papers. "It means I'm also conducting an investigation." Melia emphasized, "There is a very unusual space right next to this room. It's large enough to be another room." Jin reached out and touched the statue. Seeing this, she asked, "It's very suspicious, isn't it? If there's something hidden, it must be right here." He was silent for a moment, then replied, "I see." Not long after he touched the statue, a secret passage appeared. Seeing the dark passageway, Jin thought, "It seems your guess was spot on." Melia wondered, pointing at the passage. "How did you know?" He answered casually. "Although this area is covered in a thick layer of dust," Jin pointed directly at the owl statue and stated firmly, "This spot alone is strangely clean." The rest was based on intuition from my experience. Then he decisively stepped into the passage. "I'll go inside and check. You should wait out here." Hearing this, Melia cried out in alarm, "Wait! I want to go with you." Jin stopped and warned her frankly, "If there's something inside, it could be one of the corrupted. This will be very dangerous. You know that, right?" She frowned and asserted, "Please don't underestimate me." Melia puffed out her chest confidently. "After all, my scores are among the top of my class this year, and I have skills that are just as good as my brother's." Hearing this, he gave a small smile and nodded. "All right, then. I'll trust in your abilities." And with that, Jin took the lead with Melia following carefully behind. As they walked, Jin could sense that the path led deep underground. Hearing that, Melia thought to herself, light manipulation techniques really are convenient. After walking a bit further, Jin suddenly spoke up. "If this were a fantasy story, I have a feeling a monster is about to appear." Hearing this, Melia suddenly froze. "Fantasy?" Then she asked, "By the way, going back to what we were talking about earlier, if you fought villains for such a long time, do you have any leads on who the culprit might be?" Jin gave a strained smile. "You're asking too many questions for one day." Afterwards, he sighed softly to himself. "I guess." The image of Ruthven suddenly appeared in his mind. It's possible that Lord Ruthven is also involved in this. Melia was stunned. "How did you know?" Jin reasoned. "He appears very calm when talking, but when he's not speaking to anyone, his mind seems to be elsewhere. That's a common trait among those who are forced to do things against their will." Contrary to his initial intentions, he recalled everything and recounted, His guard was also unusually strong, but I pretended not to notice. After hearing that, Melia also furrowed her brow in thought. Before this, I thought Teacher Gita was the suspicious one. But Jin just smiled and replied that it would be impossible for a lecturer like him. He recalled the expression on Gita's face and thought that all of his emotions were written so clearly on his face, so he must be a kind-hearted soul, not a conniving bone in his body. After saying that, he looked down the path ahead. All right, let's keep going. Suddenly, they both saw a scene of swirling dust and white smoke in front of them. Melia walked while looking up, observing. It's hard to believe there's a space this vast down here, underneath the Academy's cellar. As they were walking, Jin suddenly stopped. This is... Seeing that Melia also felt a flicker of fear. What's wrong? He exclaimed in astonishment, to think it would be in a place like this. Jin looked at the sturdy gate before him and thought to himself, the gate to the laboratory that Kagura left behind is everywhere. Jin looked up at the door. It stood towering before him, and he silently marveled. This is the laboratory Kagura left behind. He carefully observed the faint blue light that coated the entire door. A number of calculations flashed through his mind. This door is protected by nanoparticles. That has to be it. At the same time, Melia stared stunned at the giant door before her, unable to hide her doubt. A huge gate like this is located beneath the Academy. She took a soft step closer to Jin and asked in a low voice, Do you think we can get inside? He placed a hand lightly on the door and replied calmly, Basically, you need an access key to get in. Melia looked bewildered at his words. An access key? Jin, still carefully observing his surroundings, replied in a calm voice, Think of it as a conduit to open this door. With that, he quietly rested his chin on his hand, lost in deep thought. Memories suddenly flooded Jin's mind. The light from the small key on Hakama's neck flashed in his memory. He carefully analyzed back in that Kodama village. Hakama was the one who inherited the key. It's very likely that someone here has received a similar inheritance. Jin frowned slightly. If that's the case, then... Before he could finish his thought, a faint light immediately escaped from his hand. Jin then placed his hand on the solid steel door. A system voice echoed in the silent space. Confirming highest-level access authorization. Jin was unlocking the door. In just a moment, the massive door slowly swung open. A blast of freezing air immediately poured out. Jin stood calmly waiting until the door was fully open, then let out a soft sigh. The one who intends to sow chaos in this nation. He led Melia inside. Before them was a giant monster imprisoned in an iron cage. Jin said in a low voice, Is the one holding the access key? The moment Melia saw it, she immediately took several steps back in fear, her voice trembling. This horrible thing is right under the Academy. She turned to look at Jin, her eyes full of suspicion. But how did you open the door? Didn't you just say you needed an access key? Jin continued to walk forward nonchalantly, calmly replying, The Ancient Ones were very special. Melia watched him, countless questions rising in her mind. Ancient Ones. She frowned slightly, silently reasoning to herself, Is he really a person from 100,000,005 years ago? Jin didn't seem to bother with Melia's thoughts. He just strolled along. Slowly observing each monster locked in the iron cages, Jin suddenly stopped and sighed softly. How strange. He narrowed his eyes slightly, his mind filled with doubt. Why would they let themselves be captured so obediently? Jin glanced over at the other monsters. He quietly calculated. Even the other corrupted ones are the same. They show no signs of wanting to attack at all. He suddenly remembered the monster he had encountered before. Come to think of it, the corrupted monster the bandits had was just as silent when it was in its cage. Jin was deep in thought. And most importantly, he silently looked at the giant monster before him, countless questions rising in his mind. A corrupted one of this immense size. How did they manage to bring it all the way in here? At that moment, Melia, gently fanning herself with a fan, suddenly spoke up. It seems my brother's suspicion that there was something shady about this academy was completely correct. She frowned, lowering her voice to strategize. If we set up an ambush here, the mastermind behind this is sure to show themselves. Just then, Jin unexpectedly cut in, No. He looked at Melia and explained calmly, Before we do that, we need to lock down the academy and eliminate all of these corrupted ones. Hearing this, Melia was so shocked, she shouted, Are you telling me to just let that criminal escape? Jin quickly replied, his voice tinged with hesitation. I understand how you feel, but what would happen if these corrupted monsters suddenly lost control? His voice dropped, and his words directly frightened Melia. The ones who would be in danger are the students of this school, the ones who are right above our heads at this very moment. Jean gently brought up the image of students laughing and talking in the schoolyard, calmly reminding her, your brother would surely prioritize everyone's safety as well. That makes more sense than prioritizing the capture of our enemy. Hearing this, Million also began to calm down and spoke softly, you have a point. Jin nodded slightly and continued, and besides, I have a bad feeling about this. His voice suddenly deepened. My instincts at times like these are usually very accurate. I want to investigate this laboratory a little more thoroughly. Jin looked over at Million, his voice softening as if asking for a favor. Please contact Agos and close the academy in my stead. Can I trust you with this? Hearing this, Million immediately nodded in agreement. As soon as he got his answer, he turned on his heel and walked away, sighing softly to himself. All right then. Jin silently looked up at the exquisite clock hanging on the wall. Then he decisively strode deeper into the laboratory, quietly contemplating as he walked. In a situation like this, I hope I can find some kind of clue. Just then, the ticking of the clock echoed coldly through the space. Back at the school, Jita trudged along amidst the whispers of everyone around him. He clenched his fists in anger, glaring at the students pointing at him. They say that new professor completely wiped the floor with him. Oh, how pathetic! Jita gritted his teeth, rage boiling inside him. It's all because of that inferior species. That my reputation has been utterly ruined, he fumed. Him control 8 types of spirit magic. He must be using some kind of cheap trick. Jita stomped his foot in frustration, screaming inwardly, I swear I will expose him with my own 2 hands. Just then, a steady voice called out from behind him. Mr. Jita! The stern headmistress looked at him and reminded him in a low voice, the students are starting to feel frightened. So could you please stop acting so strangely? Seeing her, Jita jumped. Heh heh, headmistress. The headmistress sighed, her voice laced with sarcasm. Oh dear, I don't mean to judge your personal hobbies, but... Hearing this, he was stunned. She thinks this is just some kind of amusement for me. Suddenly, her voice rose. By the way, have you seen Mr. Ruderman anywhere? Jita hesitated before asking, You mean Mr. Ruderman? He stroked his chin thoughtfully and replied, Now that you mention it, I haven't seen Mr. Ruderman since the entrance ceremony today. Before he could finish, the headmistress sighed in exasperation. This is so troublesome. She held her head, her voice full of regret. I had something I wanted to consult him about regarding the classes for the new students. Suddenly, the headmistress stopped, her sharp eyes glancing upwards. What is that? She stared at the dark clouds in the sky, her voice hesitant. I wonder what that could be.